Chapter 335. Shopkeeper Zhang knew Ing Hai's personality very well. He didn't even bother to exaggerate the truth. He only told Ing Hai the whole story without leaving out a single word, and succeeded in provoking Ing Hai's anger. Seeing Ing Hai's ashen face, Shopkeeper Zhang smiled inwardly. He knew that the gold lacquer blacksmith shop was doomed this time. Seventh young master, the expert hired by the gold lacquer blacksmith shop, is extremely powerful. Why don't we endure this time? Shopkeeper Zhang retreated in order to advance. On the surface, it seemed like he was thinking for Ing Hai. However, with Ing Hai's stubborn personality, the more he persuaded Ing Hai to endure, the more Ing Hai couldn't bear it. As expected, Ing Hai slammed the tea table and stood up abruptly. He asked coldly, "Do you think I'm afraid of them?" Shopkeeper Zhang was overjoyed in his heart, but on the surface, he looked scared and helpless. He muttered, "I'm only thinking for seventh young master, humph." Ing Hai snorted. "The gold lacquer blacksmith shop. I haven't even done anything to you, and you've already attacked me. Do you really think I'm that easy to bully?" He glanced at Shopkeeper Zhang. "Go back. I'll settle this matter myself." "Yes, seventh young master." Shopkeeper Zhang immediately bowed and answered. Since he had achieved his goal, Shopkeeper Zhang had no interest in staying here. Since Ing Hai asked him to leave, he couldn't wait to leave. After leaving the young master's residence in the carriage, Shopkeeper Zhang revealed a sly smile. "You're just a kid who's still wet behind the ears. No matter how powerful you are, you're still being played in the palm of my hand." He felt a sense of accomplishment for being able to play the seventh young master in circles. It was a pity that he didn't have the chance to interact with the Crown Prince. Otherwise, he wouldn't mind using the same trick on the Crown Prince. Men. After Shopkeeper Zhang left, Ing Hai immediately gathered his men and prepared to head to the Crown Prince's residence to borrow a ninth-stage powerhouse to deal with the mysterious expert from the gold lacquer blacksmith shop. "Your subordinate is here. Come, follow me to the Crown Prince's residence." "Yes." However, just as the eighth-stage powerhouses received the order, three figures walked into the hall from outside. The leader was a young man with an indescribable nobility. He had a strong physique and exuded the aura of a superior. However, his expression was very gentle and his eyes flickered with the light of wisdom. "Ah, big brother!" Ing Hai shouted in surprise when he saw the person. There was only one person in the world who could be called Big Brother by Ing Hai, and that was the current Crown Prince of the Great Qin Empire, young Master Ing Qing. Behind Ing Qing was a middle-aged man and an old man. They were his right-hand men. One was a level 9 Earth Warrior, and the other was a level 8 Earth Mage. The two of them were ordered by his teacher to protect his safety and listen to his orders. Under normal circumstances, no matter where he went, these two experts would follow him. They could be said to be his personal bodyguards. After Ing Qing walked into the hall, he asked with a faint smile, "Little Hai, it seems like you are preparing to go out?" Ing Hai chuckled and said, "I was just about to go to the Crown Prince's residence to look for you. I didn't expect you to come. What a coincidence! What can I do for you?" Ing Qing tilted his head and looked at Ing Hai. Hearing this, Ing Hai's smile slowly disappeared and he said angrily, "It's about the golden lacquer blacksmith shop. Big brother, let me tell you." He told Ing Qing everything that Shopkeeper Zhang said without hiding anything. In the end, he couldn't calm down and said with a cold voice, "That golden lacquer blacksmith shop is just a small blacksmith shop. They dared to attack my people and even seriously injured one of my subordinate. I'm afraid it will be difficult for him to recover in 3 to 5 months. I can't take this lying down. I basically understand the situation." Ing Qing was not surprised at all, as if he had already heard about it. The facts proved that he indeed knew about this matter. He said, "Don't interfere in this matter. I will solve it for you." Ing Hai was pleasantly surprised, Big brother, you are going to act personally? Without waiting for Ing Ching to nod, Ing Hai clenched his fist and shouted, Great! As long as Big Brother acts, that golden lacquer blacksmith shop will be finished. Unexpectedly, Ing Ching shook his head and said, This is a special period. I can't directly send people to attack golden lacquer blacksmith shop. The special period was obviously referring to the matter of Jing Yuan playing the zither. Now, the continent's attention was focused on this matter, especially in the Great Qin Empire. There were many ninth-level and even supreme-level powerhouses. The emperor personally gave an order to ensure the stability of the imperial capital, especially around the sorrowful wind flower stream. If there was a slight mistake, it would cause a huge earthquake. Although he was the crown prince, he didn't dare to be the accomplice of a villain at this time. If he was caught, or if he accidentally offended a senior, then his position would be threatened. Of course, even if it wasn't a special period, he couldn't personally bully the people of the empire. As the crown prince, he still had to abide by some principles. This, Ing Hai said sullenly, do we have to swallow this? Ing Ching's mouth twitched, revealing a faint smile. Although we can't act, it doesn't mean there is no other way. Ing Hai looked at Ing Ching in confusion. Big brother, what do you mean? Heaven's secrets cannot be revealed. Ing Ching shook his head, a mysterious smile hanging on his face. Then, he added, however, before that, I have to do something first. As he spoke, his tone was slightly cold. What is it? Teach a dog a lesson. Ing Ching narrowed his eyes, a dangerous light flashing in them. I have to teach it well. A dog should have the awareness of a dog. Who? You will know soon. Ing Ching smiled faintly. Not long after, Ing Ching led his 2 personal guards and Ing Hai to a place. This was a medical center at the intersection of Sorrowful Wind Street. After entering the medical center, Ing Ching's group went directly to shopkeeper Zhang. Without waiting for shopkeeper Zhang to speak, Ing Ching said to the 9th-level Earth warrior beside him, Uncle Yang, sorry to trouble you. That 9th-level Earth warrior surnamed Yang nodded. Under shopkeeper Zhang's puzzled gaze, he threw a punch. Boom. Ah! Shopkeeper Zhang let out a shrill scream and fell directly to the ground, curling up into a ball. Cold sweat dripped from his head and his face was as pale as paper. But this was not the end. Before Crown Prince Ing Ching gave the order to stop, the 9th-level Earth warrior surnamed Yang would not stop attacking, and shopkeeper Zhang would continue to suffer such pain. Of course, the Earth warrior of the 9th step, surnamed Yang, had a sense of propriety. He didn't seriously injure shopkeeper Zhang with a single punch, but each of his punches was more painful than an ordinary punch. The place where he attacked was the most painful place on the human body. His method of attack was also the most painful. After torturing shopkeeper Zhang for half an hour, Ing Ching ordered to stop. Looking at shopkeeper Zhang, who was lying on the ground like a dead dog, Ing Ching's gentle expression flashed with a cold light. He slowly squatted down, patted shopkeeper Zhang's head with his palm, and said with a smile, You think you are very smart, but in fact you are just a dog. If you try to control your master, then you will lose the qualification to be a dog. After saying a lot of words that no one understood, Ing Ching slowly got up, wiped his hands, tidied up his cuffs and collar, and then said with a smile, Okay, let's go. Oh right. But just as he reached the door, he stopped, turned around and said, A dog that knows its place can live a good life. After that, he walked out of the clinic with a laugh. On the ground, shopkeeper Zhang was dying, his eyes full of fear. After a while, someone came into the room and found the dying shopkeeper Zhang. He immediately exclaimed, Shopkeeper! Shopkeeper Zhang is injured, come quickly! Gold lacquer blacksmith shop. Ing Ching and the others came here. He did not care about the backyard of the gold lacquer blacksmith shop. With his identity as the crown prince, there must be a place for him in the sorrowful wind flower stream. However, Hai was not qualified to enter the sorrowful wind flower stream, so the gold lacquer blacksmith shop was still a little important to Hai. Is it here? Ching looked at Hai. Hai nodded. Many people around had already recognized Ching and Hai. Whether it was Ching, the noble crown prince, or Hai, the good-for-nothing prince, they were both very famous people. The difference was that Ching was a positive character, while Hai was a negative character. Although they were born from the same mother, the two brothers had a huge difference in personality, talent, and other aspects. One could even say that they were complete opposites. Let's go in. Ching had a sunny and kind smile on his face. Hai quickly followed behind him, eager to see how Ching was going to teach the people of the gold lacquer blacksmith shop a lesson. He sneered in his heart, "With my big brother here, even if you are a 9th-grade powerhouse, you will have to kowtow and admit your mistake." Outside the blacksmith shop, many people were outside, pointing and whispering, but they did not dare to say anything. They were very sympathetic in their hearts. Shopkeeper Fu is in big trouble this time. He could have provoked anyone, but he had to provoke the 7th young master. Even the crown prince is here. Shopkeeper Fu is doomed this time. They looked at the dignified crown prince Ching and could not help but sigh in their hearts. They did not dislike the crown prince. The crown prince was good at everything, and he was good to the people. It was just that he spoiled his younger brother too much. It was because of his younger brother, the 7th young master Hai, that there was a flaw in his image. Otherwise, he would be the most outstanding among all the crown princes. Everyone attributed all the mistakes of the crown prince to the 7th young master Hai. He was the most outstanding positive character, and his younger brother was the most detestable negative character. His good points were vividly displayed in front of his younger brother. Fu Shouquan had just sent people to tidy up the things in the blacksmith shop. When he raised his head, he saw Ching and Hai. Instantly, Fu Shouquan's face changed. He lowered his head and said in a hoarse voice, "This commoner greets the crown prince and the 7th young master." His mouth was full of bitterness. The crown prince was here. The crown prince was really here. He sighed in his heart, "It's over. The gold lacquer blacksmith shop is completely finished." Not to mention the two mysterious young powerhouses in the backyard, even if young Master Pan came personally, he would not be able to defeat the crown prince. A 5th-grade earth mage, a 5-star blacksmith, the direct disciple of an intermediate supreme Meng Tian, the champion of the Young Masters tournament, and the future emperor. Any one of these identities was enough to crush others, let alone all these identities on one person. P.S. First update. Blacksmith VIP Group. 168605329 Blacksmith Group. 204276549. Chapter 336. Inside the gold lacquer blacksmith shop. Fu Shouquan and the other blacksmith shop members knelt down on one knee and saluted. At this moment, everyone's heart sank to the bottom of the valley. They could imagine that in the face of the current crown prince, even if the two mysterious young experts were both 9th-rank Earth warriors, they would never be able to defeat the crown prince. No one had confidence in Lin Feng and Huang Wenbing. It was not that they thought Lin Feng and Huang Wenbing were weak, but that their enemy was too strong, so strong that it was suffocating. However, unlike what they had imagined, Crown Prince Ching did not send people to deal with them. Instead, he smiled kindly and said, "You must be shopkeeper Fu, right?" Fu Shouquan trembled and said in a deep voice, "This humble one is." "Shopkeeper Fu, don't be nervous. This humble one came here not to make trouble for no reason, but to apologize to you." Ching's smile made everyone feel as if they were bathed in a spring breeze. As soon as these words came out, not only was Hai beside Ching stunned, but also Fu Shou-quan and the other blacksmith shop members were stunned. The crowd outside was also stunned. The dignified crown prince actually bowed his head and apologized to the shopkeeper of a blacksmith shop. This was simply unbelievable. However, in their hearts they admired and recognized Ing Ching even more. After all, this was not something an ordinary person could do. This kind of bearing deeply impressed them. "Big brother, you," Ing Hai said anxiously. Ing Ching waved his hand and interrupted his words and continued, "The seventh young master is this humble one's younger brother. As his elder brother, this humble one failed to control his younger brother well and caused a lot of trouble for shopkeeper Fu. This humble one should bear all the mistakes. Not only did he not shirk the responsibility, but he also took all the mistakes made by Ing Hai on himself." For a moment there seemed to be some kind of sacred halo on his body, which made the surrounding people deeply impressed. In an instant, the image of the crown prince's righteousness was deeply engraved in everyone's mind. But when he said this, his tone changed. "It's just that the man who was seriously injured by the expert invited by shopkeeper Fu at noon is our great benefactor. When we were young, Uncle Yang taught us cultivation and refining. Although we were not master and disciple in name, we were master and disciple in reality. Later on, Uncle Yang escorted me and helped me ascend to the position of crown prince. After I was made the crown prince, I gradually stopped relying on Uncle Yang so much. As for my younger brother, he couldn't bear to part with Uncle Yang, so he kept Uncle Yang by his side to continue their friendship." As he spoke, Ing Ching's eyes reddened, as if he was about to cry. Slowly, cold sweat began to appear on Fu Shou-quan's forehead. The members of the blacksmith shop also began to tremble. Although Crown Prince Ing Ching hadn't finished his words, their hearts had already turned cold. "Uncle Yang has done us a great favor. Now that Uncle Yang has been injured and his life is in danger, as soon as I heard about it, I hurried here from my mansion. First, I want to express my sincere apology to Manager Fu. Second," Ing Ching's expression gradually turned cold, "I want to see the expert invited by Manager Fu. Even a blind man could see what he was trying to do." Fu Shou-quan trembled and said, "Replying to your highness, that person was not invited by this commoner, but a guest of young Master Pan. He was prepared to stay here for a few days, but he accidentally injured. I don't care who invited him. I just want to see him." At this moment, Ing Ching showed the domineering attitude of a crown prince. Although he was domineering, there was also sincerity in his attitude. "Manager Fu, please let him come out and see me, so that I can resolve the regret in my heart." This. Fu Shou-quan hesitated. Outside the blacksmith shop, the onlookers couldn't help but speak for Crown Prince Ing Ching. "Manager Fu, you'd better hurry up and hand that person over." "That's right. That person almost killed Crown Prince's benefactor. Why would you put yourself in danger for such a person? Don't hesitate. Crown Prince is already very kind to you by not venting his anger on you. What else do you want?" Hearing that the onlookers were on the Crown Prince's side, the bitterness in Fu Shou-quan's mouth intensified. Beside Ing Ching, Ing Hai looked at this scene in astonishment. After he came to his senses, he worshipped his Crown Prince even more. He secretly gave a thumbs up to Ing Ching in his heart. Ing Ching was indeed his elder brother. With just a few words, he turned the situation around and even took the side of justice. At this time, in the crowd outside, two figures slowly pushed through the crowd and walked into the blacksmith shop. Both of them were very young. One looked to be in his early 20s, while the other looked to be less than 30. They were Lin Feng and Huang Wenbing, who had just returned from tasting some delicacies in a restaurant outside. Nono stood quietly on Lin Feng's shoulder, pretending to be an ordinary bird. If its identity as a supreme demonic beast was exposed, it would probably scare a lot of people. Therefore, for the sake of convenience, Nono usually didn't speak in front of outsiders. Even if it wanted to say something, it would do it through soul transmission. Lin Feng and Huang Wenbing had been watching the show outside for a while. When Crown Prince Yingqing arrived, they were already in the crowd. Only now did they take the initiative to show themselves, unwilling to make things difficult for Fusho Quan. "You're looking for me?" Huang Wenbing walked over directly and said casually. As an elementary supreme demonic beast and the young master of Huang clan, one of the 8 great clans, how could he be afraid of a mere mortal crown prince? Even if the crown prince's teacher was an intermediate supreme demonic beast, he wasn't afraid at all. One should know that Huang clan had 2 intermediate supreme demonic beasts and several elementary supreme demonic beasts. Besides, the 8 great clans were bound together for good or ill. If he was bullied, the other clans wouldn't sit by and do nothing. Walking to Yingqing, Huang Wenbing said, "I was the one who injured him." "What? Do you want to take revenge on me, or what? Do you want to fight again?" "No problem, I can wait for you to gather your men. I'll fight you anytime." Perhaps others would think that he was arrogant, but Huang Wenbing didn't mean to be arrogant. He really didn't put Yingqing in his eyes, and he really did have enough capital. In the end, he was the one who was provoked. He was the victim. Yingqing glanced at the 9th-rank Earth Warrior and 8th-rank Earth Magician behind him. Seeing them secretly shaking their heads, he couldn't help but look at Huang Wenbing thoughtfully. "Although I'm in the right, it's best not to act rashly in this special period," Yingqing thought. He smiled faintly, as if he didn't feel the slightest bit of anger towards Huang Wenbing's arrogant attitude. He said very calmly, "I'm the current crown prince of Great Qin, Yingqing. May I ask who you are?" Huang Wenbing smiled faintly, staring at Yingqing until he felt a little scared. Then he said slowly, "I'm just an insignificant little fart from Zhao country, Huang Wenbing." After that, he turned his head and winked at Lin Feng. "This guy." Lin Feng shook his head helplessly and then said, "Zhao country, Lin Feng." Yinghai suddenly reacted, and his eyes widened. "I remember, it's you." Huang Wenbing raised his eyebrows. This kid's memory seemed to be good. "What, little Hai, do you know them?" Yingqing frowned. He felt that the name Lin Feng was very familiar. When he heard this name, he couldn't help but feel a surge of hatred, but he didn't react for a moment. Yinghai sneered. "Of course I know them. They were in Dan City." "Wait, Zhao country, Lin Feng." He stopped halfway and suddenly looked at Lin Feng with a surprised expression. "Don't tell me you're that Lin Feng who was rumored to have withdrawn from the Young Masters tournament?" After Yinghai's reminder, Yingqing also reacted instantly, and a cold light flashed in his eyes. Lin Feng smiled bitterly. He only said his name and nationality, but he was recognized. However, outsiders couldn't connect the genius Lin Feng from the Young Masters tournament with the mysterious Dean Lin from Qingfeng College. In the current mainland, except for the people from Qingfeng College, a few people from the royal family of Zhao country, and some core members of the 8 great families, almost no one knew that the Dean Lin of Qingfeng College was Lin Feng. Since he was recognized, Lin Feng didn't have to hide it anymore. He nodded slightly. "Yes, it's me." "So you're that Lin Feng who withdrew from the tournament?" Crown Prince Yingqing stared at Lin Feng and narrowed his eyes. Maybe other people didn't have much impression of Lin Feng, but Yingqing and Yinghai remembered him very clearly. This was because when Yingqing won the last Youth Masters tournament, some people mentioned that a super genius named Lin Feng withdrew from the finals of the Youth Masters tournament in the state of Zhao. That was how Yingqing won the championship. Lin Feng was a 5-star blacksmith, and so was Yingqing. However, many people thought that Lin Feng's blacksmithing ability was better than Yingqing's. The princes who were secretly competing with him for the throne often mentioned this matter to him, either intentionally or unintentionally. They said that his title as the champion of the Youth Masters tournament was too fake. Although he was the champion in name, he was no match for the genius from the Zhao kingdom who had withdrawn from the tournament. He didn't live up to his title. Therefore, when it came to this Lin Feng whom he had never met, there was only hatred in his heart. Endless hatred. The name Lin Feng brought him endless shame. The people around him never dared to mention Lin Feng in front of him, because whoever mentioned Lin Feng was equivalent to provoking him. It was funny that a genius from Zhao country who was thousands of miles away could have such a big impact on him. Even Ying Qing himself felt that it was unbelievable. He's Lin Feng? It can't be, right? Fu Shouchuan was stunned. The blacksmith shop's members were also shocked. Obviously, they didn't expect this young man to be the famous genius Lin Feng in the blacksmith world. What they didn't expect was that Lin Feng would show up here. Most of the onlookers were confused and didn't know who Lin Feng was. Only a few people vaguely remembered the genius blacksmith Lin Feng. Therefore, those who knew the truth immediately explained to their companions in a low voice. After hearing the explanation, the onlookers suddenly realized that such a strange thing had happened in the young master's tournament of Zhao country. However, His Highness was already a 5-star blacksmith back then. Now, he has been learning from Meng Tian Supreme. His cultivation and blacksmithing ability are both improving rapidly. How can that Lin Feng defeat His Highness? The onlookers couldn't help but shake their heads secretly. Blacksmith VIP Group 168605329 Blacksmith Ordinary Group 204276549. Chapter 337. Boss, looks like you've become famous again. Nono giggled as she transmitted her voice. Why did she say again? Because before this, as the headmaster of the Clear Wind Academy, Lin Feng had already become a renowned figure in the entire Azure Wood continent. Countless commoners were deeply grateful to him, and even many of the big shots of various forces were secretly grateful to Lin Feng. However, no one knew that the great hero who could support the heavens and support the earth was actually this young man in his early 20s. Lin Feng. Ying Hai stared fiercely at Lin Feng. You didn't take the path to heaven, but you insisted on barging into hell. Let's see how you're going to escape this time. Lin Feng looked at Ying Hai quietly. His face was calm and he didn't say a word. Ying Qing called out softly, Little Hai. Brother, back then he almost, shut up. Ying Qing took a deep breath and turned his head to look at Lin Feng. Although your friend injured the benefactor of 7th young master and me, I am the crown prince of the great Qin dynasty, and you are honored guests from the state of Zhao. Of course, I won't use my status to bully you. However, we can't just let this go. We have to think of a way to solve this. Huang Wenbing sneered, Bully us? That depends on whether you have the ability to do so. Wenbing. Lin Feng shook his head, indicating that he shouldn't talk too much. Seeing this, Huang Wenbing bitterly shut his mouth. However, there was a trace of mockery on his lips, as if he was mocking Ying Qing's ignorance. Then, Lin Feng calmly looked at Ying Qing. How do you plan to solve this, Crown Prince? Ying Qing pretended to ponder for a moment, then slowly said, I've heard of you. You're the blacksmith genius who quit halfway in the last young master's tournament. I happen to be a blacksmith myself, and I think my blacksmithing skills aren't bad. Then, do you dare to have a blacksmithing duel with me? As the wager, if you win, I'll pretend that nothing happened today. I'll also give you my seat at the Sad Wind Flower Stream. If you lose, you and your friend will have to apologize to me and the 7th young master, and give up the gold lacquer blacksmith shop's backyard. The surrounding crowd, Fu Shouquan, and the blacksmith shop's members were in an uproar when they heard this. Who would have thought that Crown Prince Ying Qing would give up his biggest advantage on his own initiative? He was going to settle the conflict through a contest of refining weapons. Although they didn't think that Crown Prince Ying Qing would lose in the weapon forging competition, it was still too risky. At this moment, the Crown Prince's image in everyone's hearts became even more lofty. Hearing Ying Qing's suggestion, Ying Hai, who was originally a little sullen, immediately beamed with joy. He looked at Lin Feng and Huang Wenbing with schadenfreude. On the other hand, Fu Shouquan and the blacksmith shop's members were deeply worried. They really didn't have confidence in Lin Feng. They knew that Lin Feng had already reached the level of a 5-star weapon refiner, but they also knew that His Highness the Crown Prince had stepped into the level of a 5-star weapon refiner 2 years ago. Recently, he had been learning from the middle-rank Supreme Being, Meng Tian, and the middle-rank Supreme Being, Meng Tian, had personally invited the Lien family's previous generation's old patriarch, Lien Yunfei, to teach His Highness the Crown Prince in weapon refinement. Under the guidance of Lien Yunfei, a top-notch 6-star weapon refiner who had once refined 3 pieces of 3-patterned spirit armor, His Highness the Crown Prince's ability in weapon refinement had definitely improved greatly, almost catching up with some veteran 5-star weapon refiners. It wasn't that they didn't think Lin Feng was strong, but Lin Feng's opponent, His Highness the Crown Prince, was too strong. In the face of such a strong opponent, they simply couldn't convince themselves that Lin Feng would win. "Boss, he wants to have a weapon forging competition with you?" Huang Wenbing's expression was strange. Except for Lin Feng and Nono, no one could understand the meaning of his expression at this time. Nono also stifled a laugh. "Boss, you are being looked down upon." Lin Feng seemed a little hesitant about the weapon forging competition that Crown Prince Ying Qing had mentioned. He said, "That's not very good, is it? With his current ability to refine weapons, if he were to have a weapon forging competition with Ying Qing, it would undoubtedly be bullying." It wasn't that he was looking down on Ying Qing, but their ability to refine weapons was simply not on the same level. Not to mention Ying Qing, even old Master Lien Yunfei, one of the 3 top-notch blacksmiths of the Xingfeng Plain, who had been invited by Meng Tian to teach Ying Qing weapon forging, was far from being comparable to Lin Feng. After thinking for a while, Lin Feng waved his hand and said, "Forget it, Your Highness the Crown Prince, you might as well find another solution." He really wasn't interested in having a weapon forging competition with a 5-star blacksmith, nor was he interested in showing off his ability to refine weapons in front of a 5-star blacksmith to enjoy the feeling of superiority. The opponent's ability to refine weapons was too low, so low that he didn't even have the desire to make a move. "What, are you scared?" Before Ying Qing could say anything, Ying Hai had already sneered. "If you're scared, just admit defeat. Why do you have to be so secretive?" Ying Qing didn't stop Ying Hai this time. With his identity, there were some words that he couldn't say, but Ying Hai could say it on his behalf. He looked at Lin Feng carelessly. On the surface, he didn't seem to care, but in fact, he was incomparably eager for Lin Feng to agree. "It's not a matter of whether I'm scared or not." Lin Feng shook his head. He wanted to explain, but he didn't know what to say. Should he tell the opponent frankly that he wasn't interested in making a move? Or should he say that he looked down on the opponent's ability to refine weapons? Or should he say that he didn't want to bully the opponent? He wanted to say something, but hesitated. In the end, he sighed and said, "In short, it's best to find another solution." The crowd was stunned. They couldn't understand Lin Feng's thinking at all. The Crown Prince had given him a chance to solve the problem through a weapon refining duel instead of directly using force. However, he refused such a good opportunity. Did he really think that the Crown Prince wouldn't dare to send people to deal with them? Ying Qing's expression slowly turned serious. He said lightly, "What if I insist on a weapon refining duel?" At this moment, he had a guess in his mind. Lin Feng was scared. He was scared that he would lose, so he didn't dare to have a weapon refining duel with him at all. The more Lin Feng refused, the less confident Lin Feng was, the more he wanted to take advantage of the situation and force Lin Feng to agree. I want to let the world know that I won the Youth Masters tournament fair and square, without any tricks. Ing Ching's hands, which were behind his back, unconsciously clenched into fists. Under the age of 30, I will be the number one in refining weapons. He was a proud and arrogant genius. He would never allow his life's glory to have a stain on it. And Lin Feng was the stain in his glory. Lin Feng's existence made him feel like a fishbone was stuck in his throat. He hated him so much. Now, he wanted to take this opportunity to prove himself. He wanted to let the world know that he was the real champion of the Young Masters tournament. Only a genius like him was qualified to be the champion. Ing Ching's attitude made Lin Feng a little confused. He felt Ing Ching's resentment towards him. However, he had never offended Ing Ching before. If it was just today's conflict, Ing Ching wouldn't hate him so much. Fu Shouquan wanted to say something but stopped. He wanted to persuade Lin Feng to agree. No matter what, it was a good thing for him if this matter could be solved peacefully. However, he also knew that he was not related to Lin Feng. He didn't have the right to ask Lin Feng to do anything for him. Therefore, he could only keep whatever he wanted to say in his heart. Today, I'll say it right here. You can either have a blacksmithing duel with my brother, royal brother, or fight with our people. You can choose for yourself. Ing Hai threatened with a ruthless expression. In the end, he did not forget to remind him. By the way, if you choose to fight with our people, then don't blame us if you are accidentally killed or disabled later. Huang Wenbing's eyes suddenly flashed with coldness. I really want to fight with you. Let's see who will be killed or disabled in the end. In an instant, the eyes of the 9th-rank Earth Warrior and the 8th-rank Earth Mage behind Ing Ching flashed, and they entered the battle state. Wenbing, don't make trouble. Lin Feng waved his hand and looked at Ing Ching. He suddenly smiled. Okay, I agree. Ing Ching looked at Lin Feng in surprise, and then he smiled as well. His smile was very bright. Lin Feng looked at the dozens of forging stations and asked, Where will the refining duel take place? Is it here? No hurry, no hurry. Ing Ching smiled faintly. You set off from Zhao and traveled thousands of miles to Xiandan City. You haven't had time to rest yet. Presumably, your spirit and physical strength have not fully recovered. Tomorrow, when you are fully recovered, we will have a refining duel. Otherwise, people will say that I am bullying you. Thank you for your concern, Crown Prince. However, this distance is nothing to me. Haha, to be safe, I still think you should rest for a night. Once Lin Feng agreed, Ing Ching was no longer in a hurry. He smiled faintly. Tomorrow at noon, this solitude will be waiting for you at the largest artifact forging pavilion in Xiandan City, the Lien Family Artifact Forging Pavilion. Whether it was intentional or not, his voice was a little louder than before. Even the onlookers outside could hear it clearly. If you don't seek death, you won't die. Lin Feng looked at Ing Ching's confident appearance and secretly shook his head. Well, as the host, I will be there on time tomorrow. In a flash, Ing Ching and the others left. The news that he and Lin Feng were going to have a refining duel spread throughout Xiandan City overnight as if it had grown wings. From the emperor to the common people, everyone knew about it. Everyone was looking forward to the duel between the two young 5-star refining geniuses. When Meng Tian, Yun Fei, and the others heard the news, they just laughed but did not scold Ing Ching. In their opinion, the result of the refining duel between Ing Ching and Lin Feng was not suspenseful at all. Perhaps Lin Feng was a 5-star refining master, but there was still a huge gap between different 5-star refining masters. Ing Ching was one of the more outstanding 5-star refining masters. Even those veteran 5-star refining masters were not 100% sure that they could beat Ing Ching, let alone Lin Feng, a young man who had just become a 5-star refining master. Before Jing Yuren started playing, the refining duel between Lin Feng and Crown Prince Ing Ching had ignited the enthusiasm of the people in Xiandan City in advance. P.S. First update. asking for monthly votes. Refining VIP Group 168605329. Refining Ordinary Group 204276549. Chapter 338. His Highness the Crown Prince and a genius from Zhao country were going to have a weapon refining duel. This topic had become the hottest topic in Xiandan City overnight. In the streets and alleys, the most talked about topic was this weapon refining duel. It even temporarily overshadowed the topic of Jing Yuren. One was the current crown prince, the champion of the last competition, and the other was a genius from Zhao country, who was secretly rated as the #1 genius by many people. A weapon refining duel between two geniuses was indeed very eye-catching. Of course, the reason why this news could spread so fast was because Crown Prince Ying Qing added fuel to the fire. As for why he did this, most people could probably guess. Inside the palace, this Lin Feng, I have also heard about him. It is said that he is a young genius in Zhao country. According to rumors, this Lin Feng reached the level of a 5-star refiner when he was 20 years old. Although there is no conclusive evidence, even if the rumors are exaggerated, it should not be too far from the truth. In comparison, the Crown Prince's talent is a bit worse. After the Great Qin Empire's current emperor Ying Yi heard about this, his words showed that he was very interested in Lin Feng. If such a talent could be used by the Great Qin Empire, it would be like adding wings to a tiger. In the future, it would be easier for the Great Qin Empire to conquer Zhao country. Of course, although he praised Lin Feng in his heart, he was still biased towards the Crown Prince. He praised Lin Feng's talent, but talent could not decide everything. Not to mention that the Crown Prince was much older than Lin Feng, and he had Meng Tian as his teacher. Meng Tian even specially invited old man Lien Yunfei to teach the Crown Prince how to refine weapons. These were the Crown Prince's advantages. Therefore, Ying Yi did not think that the Crown Prince would lose. Perhaps I should personally meet this little guy. Ying Yi thought quietly, I am the emperor of a country. If I personally invite him and promise him generous conditions, this little guy should not refuse, right? Gold lacquer blacksmith shop. Boss, why did you stop me? Huang Wenbing thought for a long time but still could not understand this question. Not to mention that rank 9 Earth Warrior and rank 8 Earth Magician, even if I killed the Crown Prince and the 7th Young Master together, the Great Qin Empire's emperor would not dare to say a word. As the young master of the Huang clan, one of the 8 great clans, and an elementary supreme being genius, he had the confidence to do so. Lin Feng shook his head. You can't just use your fists to solve everything. What's more, it's not like there aren't any benefits at all from this artifact refining competition. At the very least, I'll be able to win a seat in the Sorrowful Wind flower stream. Speaking up to here, even he couldn't help but laugh. He had never thought that one day, he would actually agree to have a refining duel with a 5-star refiner for a seat to listen to someone play a string. Do you really believe what Lianxi said? Huang Wenbing curled his lips. I don't believe that playing a song can help people break through their cultivation. Then why are you willing to live here? Lin Feng asked. I'm just curious, Huang Wenbing said. What else could it be? The next day, Lin Feng and Huang Wenbing went out for breakfast early in the morning. The upcoming refining duel had no effect on them at all. It was unknown whether they were confident or had simply forgotten about it. After returning to the gold lacquer blacksmith shop, Lin Feng stopped in his track. An old blacksmith stammered as he walked up to him and said, Lord Lin, can you teach this old man how to refine artifacts? No, this old man doesn't expect Lord Lin to accept me as your disciple. No, this old man. He looked very nervous, speaking intermittently and stuttering, which made people confused. Lin Feng was startled for a moment, then he smiled and said, What technique? The old blacksmith was startled for a moment, and looked at Lin Feng in confusion. "Didn't you want to ask me how to refine artifacts?" Lin Feng helplessly looked at the old blacksmith. "You have to tell me what technique it is, right?" The old blacksmith was instantly ecstatic. He had only gathered his courage to give it a try. He didn't have much hope, but he didn't expect that Lin Feng would be so easy to talk to. "Turtle pattern technique, it's the turtle pattern technique." The old blacksmith was afraid that Lin Feng would go back on his words, so he quickly said. Lin Feng didn't pretend to be aloof, and immediately gave a simple explanation to the old blacksmith. He didn't expect that more and more people would gather around, but he didn't think too much about it. In any case, he was idle right now, so he casually explained it to these people. He would use this method to repay Fu Shouquan for providing him with accommodation in the backyard. Although it was only a simple explanation, who was Lin Feng? He was the #1 refiner in the history of the Xingfen continent. At the same time, he was also the founder of the technique refining school. He casually gave a few words of advice, and many of the blacksmiths were endlessly benefited. If those who knew about Lin Feng's identity knew about this, they would be envious of these lowly blacksmiths. Huang Wenbing listened on the side, but unfortunately, even after Lin Feng spoke for a long time, he didn't understand a single word. "It seems that I can only cultivate honestly for the rest of my life," he wailed in his heart, incomparably disheartened. The sun climbed higher and higher, and after an unknown amount of time, it was slowly approaching noon. When Lin Feng was still giving pointers to these blacksmiths, although Fu Shouquan was very unwilling to interrupt this scene, he still had to go forward and remind him, "Lord Lin, it's almost time for you to have a refining duel with His Highness the Crown Prince." Lin Feng came back to his senses, nodded to Fu Shouquan, and then smiled at the group of blacksmiths. "I have to go out, you can practice by yourselves." A moment later, Lin Feng and Huang Wenbing, under the guidance of Fu Shouquan, arrived at the largest refining pavilion in Xianduan City, the Lian clan's refining pavilion. At this time, the outside of the Lian clan's refining pavilion was crowded with people. Although the pavilion was incomparably spacious, because of the large number of people, it seemed a little narrow. When Lin Feng and Huang Wenbing appeared, they immediately attracted the attention of the surrounding people, and there was a lot of whispers. "This is the genius of the Zhao state? He looks like he's in his 20s, there doesn't seem to be anything special. Is he really a 5-star refiner? Haha, this guy actually dares to have a refining duel with His Highness the Crown Prince, I really admire his courage. How can a mere genius of the Zhao state compare with His Highness the Crown Prince of the Great Qin Empire?" The surrounding people looked at Lin Feng with a trace of hostility, ridicule, disdain, doubt, gloating, and hatred. However, Lin Feng's expression was very calm from beginning to end, and there was not the slightest change. Inside the Lian clan's refining pavilion, today there were many important people here. The current emperor of the Great Qin Empire, Ing Yi, intermediate supreme Meng Tian, several 9th-step earth warriors, as well as an 8th-step earth mage. There were also several 6-star refiners and more than 10 5-star refiners. In addition, there was also a top refiner whose status was even higher than Emperor Ing Yi Lian Yunfei. Lin Feng glanced at the group of people, then withdrew his gaze and calmly walked to the forging seat opposite Crown Prince Ing Qing. Lian Yunfei, Meng Tian, Ing Yi, and the rest of the people in the Lian clan's refining pavilion were sizing up Lin Feng. "Can we start?" Lin Feng asked with a smile. Crown Prince Ing Qing was full of confidence, and he sneered in his heart, "Today, most of the important people of the Great Qin Empire are here. In front of so many people, I will defeat you fair and square, and I will make you speechless, and I will let the world know that my title as the champion is not undeserved." This was a refining duel that he would use to prove himself, and he would not allow any accidents to happen. Therefore, no matter how good Lin Feng's refining ability was, He would do his best. Let's start. Emperor Ingyi nodded. In fact, he was also a little impatient. Everyone had been waiting for a long time, and when they heard Ingyi announce the start of the competition, their attention was immediately focused on Crown Prince Ingqing and Lin Feng, and their gazes shifted back and forth between the two. As soon as the competition started, Ingqing quickly squatted down, lit the furnace, and controlled the flame. His movements were very skillful and meticulous. When everyone saw this, they couldn't help but praise in their hearts. What skillful movements, what fast speed, what perfect palm fire technique. When they turned to look at Lin Feng, they found that this guy had no intention of making a move. Not only that, he was actually watching Ingqing's palm fire with great interest, and from time to time, he would show a look of praise and nod slightly, as if he was commenting on Ingqing's refining ability in his heart. The surrounding people couldn't help but frown, and they felt that Lin Feng was arrogant and conceited. He can't even compare to His Highness. What qualifications does he have to comment on His Highness? Yun Fei, Ingyi Meng Tian, and the others also noticed this scene. They couldn't help but secretly shake their heads, and their evaluation of Lin Feng in their hearts dropped a lot. Maybe we overestimated him. The same thought popped up in their minds at the same time. They couldn't be blamed for being so disappointed. After all, no one would have thought that Lin Feng, who seemed to be in a hurry just a moment ago, would be so motionless after the competition started. Little Qing's palm fire technique is getting more and more perfect. Meng Tian revealed a gratified smile. It seems that he didn't slack off during this period of time. Ingyi was also very satisfied. Not bad. Yun Fei watched quietly, and didn't say anything. In his heart, he was wondering if he should think of a way to snatch Ingqing, this talented disciple of his, from Meng Tian's hands. He hadn't seen such a talented young man in a long time. If Ingqing was willing to become his disciple and receive his careful training, Ingqing might very well become the second him in the future. No wonder he was able to become the champion of the Young Masters tournament. This palm fire technique is indeed not something that ordinary people can master. Lin Feng also silently evaluated Ingqing in his heart. Among the 5-star blacksmiths, his palm fire technique should be ranked at the top. I just don't know how his fusion technique is like. It shouldn't be too bad, right? He was just curious about Crown Prince Ingqing's blacksmithing ability, but he didn't expect that his actions would cause everyone's evaluation of him to plummet. Of course, even if he knew, he wouldn't care. After half an hour, after seeing Ingqing's fusion technique, Lin Feng had a clear understanding of Ingqing's blacksmithing ability. It's about the same as Hanlin from Jingmen City. Lin Feng made a comparison and finally made such an evaluation. Huff. After coming to this conclusion, he retracted his gaze and no longer paid attention to Ingqing's blacksmithing. The competition was about to end. He smiled faintly, squatted down lightly, and lit the furnace. Boom! 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 3 sudden explosions instantly attracted the attention of Yun Fei, Ingyi, and the others. Blacksmithing VIP Group 168605329 Ordinary Blacksmithing Group 204276549. Chapter 339. Perhaps in the eyes of outsiders, this was a wonderful competition, but to Lin Feng, this was just a game. Moreover, this game also gave him the opportunity to listen to the mysterious Jing Yuan play the zither, so why not? From the moment the flame was ignited to the moment it reached its peak and transformed, the whole process only took 3 breaths. When everyone saw this scene, their eyes almost popped out. At this moment, an absurd thought appeared in their minds. Perhaps this genius from Zhao country, Lin Feng, was really a super genius. This time, the Crown Prince would probably fall in front of this genius Lin Feng. What a terrifying palm fire technique! If they didn't see it with their own eyes, no one would believe that such a strange palm fire technique actually existed in this world. In the short span of 3 breaths, the ordinary fire was pushed to the extreme and transformed into a strange flame. Yunfei's relaxed expression immediately became serious, and his eyelids couldn't help but twitch slightly. He had a premonition in his heart that this Lin Feng was not as simple as he seemed on the surface. The result of this refining competition might be a little different from what he had expected. This kind of palm fire ability, even I can't do it, Yunfei asked himself, and a trace of frustration appeared in his heart. In just 3 breaths, Lin Feng's performance changed everyone's impression of him. From this moment on, no one dared to look down on him anymore. Lin Feng easily stabilized the flame, and the whole process was very easy, without the slightest bit of effort. Every movement was like a stroke of genius, and the effect was extraordinary. As the Crown Prince Yingqing's father and teacher, Ying Yi and Meng Tian slightly frowned. However, the two of them were silent. Just from their expressions, it was impossible to tell what they were thinking. Boom! 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 The commotion in Yingqing's furnace was quite loud, and the rumbling sounds were unceasing. He swung his giant hammer, and every strike of the hammer brought out his refining ability to the maximum. He was completely immersed in refining, and the only thing in his eyes was the weapon that was gradually taking shape in the furnace. It had to be said that Yingqing's refining ability was really good. This time, he even performed better than usual. His refining ability had improved slightly. Whether it was the aesthetic value or the actual refining effect, it was better than usual. At this time, he had entered a subtle state, and was at the peak of refining. Perhaps even those veteran 5-star refiners were not confident that they could beat him. If it was a normal time, perhaps Ying Yi, Meng Tian, Yunfei, and the others would be very pleased, and the surrounding audience would also be amazed. But at this moment, everyone's eyes were firmly attracted to Lin Feng, and were unwilling to move away for a moment. No matter how big a commotion Yingqing made or how well he performed, no one showed any interest in him. At this time, Lin Feng had already stood up, holding the giant hammer in his hand. Quietly watching the rare materials being refined, fused, and slowly turned into colorful fused materials, Lin Feng was expressionless. His emotions remained absolutely calm, as if he was a statue that had been standing here since ancient times. Buzz, buzz, buzz! Suddenly, Lin Feng waved the giant hammer. Without any warning, the giant hammer followed an invisible trajectory and drew a beautiful arc in the air. The surrounding audience was confused, and even the low-level refiners were at a loss. They faintly felt that Lin Feng's fusing skills were not as good as Crown Prince Yingqing's. Because Lin Feng's movements were too light, the giant hammer did not cause much of a disturbance, and was too gentle. Although it gave people a mysterious feeling, it was not as real as Crown Prince Yingqing's. In the furnace in front of Lin Feng, the materials that were emitting faint light seemed to have not changed at all. However, was this really the case? When Lin Feng swung the hammer, Yunfei, who originally had a serious expression, suddenly stood up and stared at the giant hammer in Lin Feng's hand. The invisible trajectory clearly flashed in his mind. His face was filled with shock, as if he had seen something inconceivable. A look of surprise also flashed across Meng Tian's face. He was extremely shocked. Senior Meng Tian, Old Master Lien, is there something special about Lin Feng's hammer? Ying Yi's gaze easily caught the strange expressions on the two's faces. He could not help but ask in a low voice. Meng Tian took a deep breath and said solemnly, "Your Majesty, this Lin Feng, I'm afraid he has already comprehended the law of earth." Hearing this, Ying Yi was shocked. He sucked in a breath of cold air. Could it be that he has already broken through to the supremacy stage? Ying Yi's eyes were burning. He was extremely eager to recruit Lin Feng. If the great Qin Empire could have such a peerless genius, they would definitely be able to unify the world in the future. Unifying the world, this was the dream of every emperor in the history of the dynasty. Meng Tian slowly shook his head. That might not be the case. As far as I know, the most talented person in the world today is the Snowflake Sovereign. When he was young, he also took more than 100 years to reach the supremacy stage. Although Lin Feng is powerful, it won't be easy for him to break through to the supremacy stage. Then what does Senior Meng Tian mean? Although this Lin Feng is not a supremacy stage, he has comprehended the law of Earth. It is equivalent to breaking through that bottleneck in advance. As long as he doesn't die prematurely, he will definitely break through to the supremacy stage in the future. It's just that we can't be sure when. Meng Tian said, I don't know how good his refining ability is, but I know that he must have terrifying talent in the Tao of cultivation. Ying Yi smiled. A genius who will definitely break through to the supremacy stage in the future is worth it for me to recruit. At this moment, Yun Yunfei still had a shocked expression on his face. It was as if he didn't hear the conversation between Ying Yi and Meng Tian. Brother Lien. Meng Tian turned his head and asked in a strange tone, although this Lin Feng is a genius, you don't have to be so shocked, right? Yun Yunfei's shocked expression was a little too much. However, Yun Yunfei still maintained the same expression. He didn't move at all. He didn't even blink. He didn't hear Meng Tian at all. Brother Lien. Meng Tian was even more puzzled. He raised his voice and patted Lien Yunfei's shoulder lightly. At this moment, Yun Yunfei came back to his senses. However, as soon as he came back to his senses, he seemed to have suffered a huge blow. He muttered in a daze, How is this possible? How is this possible? Even now, he still hadn't noticed Meng Tian beside him. Meng Tian didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He said, Old Lien, even if this Lin Feng has comprehended the law of Earth, you don't have to be like this, right? Unexpectedly, Lien Yunfei didn't even turn his head. He put his index finger between his lips and said, Shoo, don't talk. He stared intently at Lin Feng, or rather, at the giant hammer in Lin Feng's hand. His eyes followed the movements of the giant hammer. In his mind, the seemingly simple hammering motion actually contained the shadows of countless techniques. 1 type, 2 types, 3 types, 100 types, 200 types, 300 types. Even though he was skilled in refining weapons and had extraordinary eyesight, he still couldn't completely distinguish how many techniques Lin Feng had integrated into each of his hammering motions. However, he was certain that each of Lin Feng's hammering motions contained at least 500 techniques. God, more than 500 techniques! Yun Yunfei couldn't be more shocked. Apart from Lien Yunfei, several other 5-star craftsmen and a 6-star craftsman also lost their composure. Outsiders didn't know, but they could see it clearly. They also deeply understood what it meant to have more than 500 techniques combined with each hammer. They didn't dare to believe the scene in front of them because it had completely broken their understanding. If they remembered correctly, they remembered that the crafting school's headmaster, Mu Wushuang, had only combined more than 160 techniques with each hammer strike, while Yun Yunfei and Ye Fan had combined more than 100 techniques. Even so, the 3 of them were ranked in the top 3 craftsmen of the punishment wind plane because they had a certain probability of refining 3-pattern spirit armor. The strongest craftsman of the punishment wind plane, Mu Wushuang, who was known as the number 1 craftsman, had only combined more than 160 techniques. But at this moment, they saw with their own eyes that Lin Feng had combined more than 500 techniques with each hammer strike. This boy's crafting ability is better than the crafting school's headmaster, Mu Wushuang? The surrounding 5-star craftsmen and above couldn't believe this fact because it was too inconceivable. It should be known that Mu Wushuang was the dignified crafting school's headmaster and also a supreme powerhouse. He had been famous for a long time, and his status was even slightly higher than those high-level supreme powerhouses. Lin Feng was just a talented youngster who had an outstanding performance in the finals of the Young Masters tournament. He was just a young boy in his 20s. The two of them weren't on the same level at all. However, the scene in front of them proved that Lin Feng, a little rookie that few people knew about, had actually suppressed Mu Wushuang, who was known as the #1 craftsman. Yunfei was greatly shocked and whispered, "How did he do it?" At this time, Yi asked doubtfully, "Old Master Lien, what's wrong?" Hearing this, Yunfei came back to his senses. He bitterly smiled and said, "Your Majesty, why don't we end this competition here?" This kind of competition was completely meaningless. One of them was his half-disciple, and his achievements in this life were limited. Whether or not he could reach the level he was at now was still unknown. On the other hand, the other was a mysterious and terrifying blacksmith that even he had to look up to. The two of them were not on the same level at all. If they continued to compete, the one who would lose face would only be Crown Prince Hai and his half-disciple. Why? Yi frowned. The competition is only halfway through. The winner and loser hasn't been revealed yet. Yunfei deeply sighed and shook his head. No, the result has already been revealed. He looked at Lin Feng, then sighed and lowered his head. The Crown Prince lost when the competition started. Lost? Yi's face showed a trace of doubt. Suppressing the anger in his heart, he said in a low voice, "I don't understand what Old Master Lien means." Glancing at Lien Yunfei lightly threw out a sentence. "In today's world, I, the head of the crafting school, Mu Wushuang, and the Han Dynasty's Niefeng are the top 3 craftsmen. But the 3 of us together still can't compare to one Lin Feng. Does your Majesty think that the Crown Prince's crafting ability is better than the 3 of us? P.S. First update. Crafting VIP Group. 168605329 Crafting Normal Group. 204276549. Chapter 340. Once Yunfei said this, Yi, Meng Tian, and the people nearby all sucked in a breath of cold air. At this moment they were almost dumbfounded. Who was Mu Wushuang? Who was Yunfei? Who was Niefeng? They were the top 3 blacksmiths in the entire Xingfeng Plain. In the circle of blacksmiths, these 3 were definitely existences standing at the peak. However, Yunfei actually admitted that the 3 of them together couldn't compare to one Lin Feng. It was hard to imagine what kind of level Lin Feng's blacksmithing ability had reached to be able to convince this top blacksmith to say such a thing. Could it be that Old Master Lien saw wrongly? Yi looked at Lin Feng. He really couldn't connect this youth with such terrifying blacksmithing ability. Yunfei said sadly, "I also hope that I saw wrongly." For a moment everyone was silent. They didn't think that Yunfei would joke about his reputation. Since Yunfei said so, then Lin Feng really did have unimaginable blacksmithing ability, as he said. I even suspect that he might have broken through the level of a 6-star blacksmith and reached the legendary 7-star blacksmith. Yunfei threw out another heavy bomb. A 7-star blacksmith was also known as the Craftsman Saint. The Craftsman Saint that only existed in legends. Yunfei wasn't exaggerating. He really guessed so in his heart because he really couldn't imagine what other blacksmith besides the Craftsman Saint could fuse more than 500 technique. Craftsman Saint. Yi fell silent and looked at Crown Prince Qing from afar. He had an impulse to choke this eldest son of his to death. He actually overestimated himself and challenged a Craftsman Saint to a blacksmithing duel. If the truth was revealed one day, this matter would probably become the laughing stock of the world forever. He took a deep breath and asked softly with a trembling voice, "Old Lien, are you sure he's really the Craftsman Saint?" Yunfei didn't nod or shake his head. Instead, he hesitated for a moment and said, I can't rule out this possibility. However, even if he's not the craftsman saint, he's definitely a peak 6-star blacksmith. Since ancient times, the only one who can stand shoulder to shoulder with him is the legendary war god Xing Feng. Apart from him, no one else can compare to him. Genius. Ying Yi was not stingy with his praise. This is an epoch-making genius. With regards to Ying Yi's evaluation, Lien Yunfei expressed a rare approval. He is indeed a genius. Ying Yi's eyes flickered and his expression became heated. If such a genius is used by me, then this world will be within my reach. The flags of the Great Qin will be planted all over the Xingfeng Plain. He could almost see the scene of the Great Qin Empire unifying the world. Sovereign Meng Tian frowned. He felt that Ying Yi was taking things for granted. However, he couldn't deny that Lin Feng was indeed such a genius. But could a small temple like the Grand Qin Empire really accommodate such a genius? However, at this moment, Ying Yi was already immersed in his own fantasy and couldn't pull himself out. The others couldn't persuade him at all. I must get him. Ying Yi clenched his fists, his expression incomparably resolute. In order to obtain him, I can do anything. Yunfei calmly advised, Your Majesty, it's best to be rational. With Lin Feng's refining ability, there's no need for him to be inferior to anyone. In this world, no one has the qualifications to order him. If you do something you know is impossible, it will cause the Great Qin Empire to fall into eternal damnation. A cold light flashed through Ying Yi's eyes, but he maintained a gentle smile on the surface. Old Master Lien, don't worry. I know what I'm doing. He looked around and said without warning, I've decided that this competition will end here. I still have matters to discuss with little brother Lin Feng. Everyone, please return. Although no reason was given, everyone had no choice but to obey the Emperor's orders. Although some of the refiners were reluctant to leave, they had no choice but to obey the Emperor's orders and leave. Soon, apart from Emperor Ying Yi, Sovereign Meng Tian, and Yunfei, there was only Crown Prince Ying Qing, Lin Feng, and Huang Wenbing in the Lien family refining pavilion. Outside the refining pavilion, Ying Yi had sent a large number of soldiers to guard it, forbidding anyone from approaching. The door was ajar and a ray of light shone through. No one knew why Ying Yi had driven everyone away. Although they were very curious, for the sake of their own lives, they still obediently followed Ying Yi's orders and left the Lien family refining pavilion. Interesting. Huang Wenbing looked at this scene with interest. Seeing that Ying Qing and Lin Feng were still refining, Ying Yi walked to Ying Qing's side and pulled out the gold-plated thin sword at his waist. With a stab, the materials were sent flying, forcing Ying Qing to stop refining. He said in a deep voice, I've already said that this competition will end here. As the Crown Prince, are you going to publicly disobey my orders? Father! Ying Qing's face was very ugly. Son knows his mistake. Please forgive me, father. He couldn't accept it. He was about to win the competition, but Ying Yi interrupted and directly announced the end of the competition, disrupting his entire plan. He really couldn't accept it. I was so close to winning. Why did it end up like this? He crazily shouted in his heart. He even had a trace of resentment towards Ying Yi. Humph! Ying Yi coldly snorted. Do you know that in Mr. Lin's eyes you're just a clown? Father! Ying Qing stared blankly at Ying Yi. He still didn't know how terrifying Lin Feng's refining ability was. Who knew that Ying Yi didn't pay attention to him at all? Instead, he walked towards Lin Feng. When he arrived in front of Lin Feng, he deeply bowed. Mr. Lin, I represent the son of a dog to apologize to you. He's still young. I hope you won't lower yourself to his level. Young? He was 7 or 8 years older than Lin Feng. This was still considered young? Hearing Ying Yi's words, Ying Qing had the urge to dig a hole in the ground. His face was simply thrown away by his father. This brat, what kind of bewitching medicine did he give my father to make him like this in an instant? Ying Qing's heart was filled with hatred. He only thought that Lin Feng didn't want to lose face in front of everyone, so he used some secret method to make his father lose his mind. Huang Wenbing curled his lips. What were you doing earlier? Only now do you know how to apologize? However, he also saw that Lin Feng's refining ability had already been exposed. Otherwise, how could the emperor change his face so quickly? Lin Feng didn't care at all. The competition is over. Can I leave now? Of course, of course. Ying Yi quickly nodded. Lin Feng nodded to Huang Wenbing. Then, the two turned around and prepared to leave. Wait! Ying Yi suddenly shouted. Lin Feng stopped and quietly turned around to look at Ying Yi. Mr. Lin, I have something to discuss with you. Ying Yi respectfully said. Lin Feng nodded. Ying Yi took a deep breath and said, in today's world, there are 3 countries: Zhao, Great Qin, and Han. Although the Zhao emperor tried his best, he couldn't change the situation. In the long run, Zhao will collapse by itself. The Han dynasty has vast fertile land and is located in the south. However, earthquakes, floods, tornadoes, and so on happen frequently. The lives of the people are poor and the lives of the nobles are rotten. From top to bottom, there is no country without destruction. Even if the sovereigns of the Eternal Continent don't attack, the Han dynasty will collapse in less than 300 years. The Great Qin Empire occupies the most land and is located in the middle, east, and southeast. The country is strong and the people are rich, prosperous, and has no internal or external troubles. The people are valiant, practicing martial arts, and the laws are the norm. The experts are as numerous as the clouds, and the wise are as numerous as the hairs on an ox. For example, I have the ever-victorious General Yu Huayu, the #1 strategist under the heavens, Go Sun, who can fight against both Zhao and Han at the same time. Your Majesty, please make it simpler. Lin Feng frowned. I've said so much because I want to tell Mr. Lin that the Great Qin Empire is the best choice for Mr. Lin. Ying Yi said, I hope Mr. Lin can move to the Great Qin Empire and become a guest of the Great Qin Empire. I will treat you as a teacher. When the Great Qin Empire unifies the world, I'm willing to give Mr. Lin the title of king with a different surname. I'll give Mr. Lin the west of the connecting mountain range, as well as the several cities and provinces of Zhao. I'm sorry, I'm not interested in these. Lin Feng shook his head lightly. Hearing this, Crown Prince Ying Qing couldn't help but reveal a look of schadenfreude. Ying Yi's frown deepened. However, in order to achieve his goal, he endured it and said, What will make Mr. Lin agree to help the Great Qin Empire? If Mr. Lin has any requests, please tell me. I can agree to any conditions. Meng Tian and Lien Yuntian both shook their heads and sighed inwardly. Ying Yi was actually trying to use worldly power to attract people like them who were above the imperial power. As they expected, Lin Feng still shook his head. I'm not interested in any conditions. Your Majesty, if there's nothing else, I'll take my leave. After saying this, he turned around and was about to leave. Mr. Lin. Ying Yi clenched his fists and said with a gloomy face, Are you sure you want to reject my suggestion? Lin Feng said indifferently, That's right. Ha. Ying Yi's tone became incomparably cold. You'd better reconsider. If you're not friends with me, then you're enemies. Whether you want to be friends or enemies, you might as well think carefully before making your choice. Lin Feng waved his hand and said, There's no need to think about it. My decision will never change. No rush, no rush. You can stay in the Great Qin Empire and slowly think about it. Maybe one day you'll change your mind. Your Majesty, are you planning to put me under house arrest? You can think of it that way. Can you tell me the reason? Lin Feng didn't seem to be afraid at all. Instead, he he asked with great interest. Yi admired Lin Feng's courage and boldness. If an ordinary person were to face this kind of situation, they would have already surrendered or been scared out of their wit. However, Lin Feng was able to remain calm. Just based on this point, he admired Lin Feng even more. Regarding Lin Feng's question, Yi didn't hide it and calmly said, "The state of Zhao and the state of Han are both enemies of the Great Qin. You come from the state of Zhao, and your refining ability is unfathomable. Even the old man is ashamed of his inferiority. If I let you go, once the Great Qin and the state of Zhao go to war in the future, you, Lin Feng, will definitely become the greatest threat to the Great Qin. I didn't expect your majesty to think so highly of me," Lin Feng said in surprise. "Should I feel honored?" Yi smiled faintly, and his words contained boundless confidence. "Lin Feng, I'll still say the same thing. Think about it carefully and tell me when you've thought it through." Refining VIP Group 168605329 Refining VIP Group 204276549. Chapter 341. Are you sure you have the ability to keep us here? Lin Feng smiled faintly. There were only two Supremes on Yi's side. One was a mid-level Supremes, Meng Tian, and the other was Yun Yunfei, who had just stepped into the Supremes realm not long ago. Just two Supremes, what did Lin Feng have to fear? Huang Wenbing held the hilt of his saber and smiled playfully. "Why don't you try?" "Haha, you don't have to scare me." Yi laughed loudly. "Although I didn't know much about you, I've heard a little about you. Lin Feng, you'd better surrender. If we really fight, I can't guarantee your safety." At the same time, Lin Feng felt a few indistinct auras locking onto him. Two of them were Supreme Master Meng Tian and Lien Yunfei. There were also 4 other auras. 3 of them were at the level of a mid-level Supreme Master. Only one of them was at the level of a low-level Supreme Master. Presumably, those 4 were the guardians of the Imperial family. Compared to the Imperial family of Zhao, they were undoubtedly stronger. 6 Supremes. 6 Supremes, TSK, what a big move. Huang Wenbing's tone didn't change, but his expression became more serious. 4 mid-level Supremes and 2 early-level Supremes. He couldn't help but be serious. Not to mention that Yi didn't know that Lin Feng was the mysterious Principal Lin. Even if he knew, he had 100% confidence in taking him down. The number of high-level Supremes in the world was exceedingly small, and they could be counted on 2 hands. Moreover, Yi had a good understanding of every high-level Supremes. He was certain that Lin Feng wasn't a high-level Supremes, and Huang Wenbing wasn't a high-level Supremes either. Just this point alone made Yi confident. "Lin Feng, I'll give you one last chance. Submit or die." Yi waved his dragon robe and said domineeringly. Lin Feng's killing intent slowly grew. "I'll give you one more chance. If you don't stop now, you'll have to bear the consequences." "Ha ha ha. Ha." Yi laughed out of anger and didn't say anything more. "Kill." Following Yi's order, the door was instantly broken open. 3 9th-stage powerhouses and a dozen 8th-stage powerhouses rushed in with weapons in hand, charging straight at Lin Feng and Huang Wenbing. "Get out!" Huang Wenbing bellowed as his aura erupted. The power of a Supreme Being powerhouse was fully displayed. He was not even interested in using his weapon, as he slapped out with his palm, sending a terrifying shockwave towards the group of enemies. In the blink of an eye, it struck 3 Type 9 powerhouses and a dozen Type 8 powerhouses. Boom! The group of experts was instantly sent flying as they let out all sorts of miserable shrieks. Pooh! All of the powerhouses that attacked were actually slapped into a bloody mess with their internal organs smashed into a pile, and they were deader than dead. The tables, chairs, tools, and wooden cabinets in the Lien clan's blacksmith pavilion were all destroyed by the powerful force. The entire Lien clan's blacksmith pavilion was shaking, and there were several large holes in it. "You're a supreme being." Yi was shocked. He looked at Huang Wenbing in bewilderment. Huang Wenbing grinned. "A mere early-stage supreme martial artist isn't worth mentioning." Humph. The corner of Yi's mouth twitched. Huang Wenbing's slap just now directly caused him to lose 3 Type 9 powerhouses and a dozen Type 8 powerhouses, causing him to feel an incomparable pain in his heart. Originally, he couldn't bear to kill Lin Feng and Meng Tian because of their talent, but now, he was determined to kill them. From the moment Huang Wenbing made his move, it only took a few breaths of time for the 4 Supreme Being powerhouses to arrive. 4 terrifying auras simultaneously acted on Huang Wenbing and Lin Feng. Yi clenched his teeth and said, "Kill them!" The 4 Supreme Beings looked at each other, and then stared coldly at Lin Feng and Huang Wenbing. Their auras instantly rose to the peak, suppressing Lin Feng and Huang Wenbing at the same time. 2 mid-stage Supreme Beings, 2 early-stage Supreme Beings. Huang Wenbing had no intention of backing down. He sneered. "What, the other 2 aren't going to attack together?" Supreme Meng Tian said calmly, "We'll talk about that after you survive their attacks." Yunfei snorted indifferently, looking at Huang Wenbing and Lin Feng as if he was looking at dead people. "Aren't they just 4 Supreme Beings? They can only scare the cats and dogs on the roadside." Although Huang Wenbing's heart was heavy, he wasn't willing to lose at all. "Today, I want to experience the power of a mid-stage Supreme Being. Let's see if a so-called mid-stage Supreme Being can really kill early-stage Supreme Beings like killing dogs. You guys, don't let me down." The mid-stage Supreme Being leader of the Imperial family said coldly, "Don't worry, we won't let you leave alive." "Ha, then let's try." Huang Wenbing shouted loudly, releasing all his strength. The power of laws surged, and his aura rose sharply, rising to the level of a mid-stage Supreme Being in a short moment. Is this some secret technique? No, it's not a secret technique, it's his true strength. Supreme Meng Tian, Lien Yunfei, and the 4 Supreme Beings of the Imperial family all looked surprised, and their expressions were no longer as relaxed as before. The mid-stage Supreme Being leader of the Imperial family also looked serious, and said coldly, "No wonder you're so arrogant, I didn't expect you to have comprehended the law of strength. One of the 7 strongest laws, the law of strength." The law of strength was terrifying, just look at the free and unfettered Supreme Being. The free and unfettered Supreme Being had been famous for a long time, and he was known as the #1 person below the Supreme Being limit. If he wanted to escape from a Supreme Being limit, even a Supreme Being limit couldn't kill him, at most defeating him. After all, not every Supreme Being limit could master the secret technique to open the Despair Prison, and not every Supreme Being limit was worth the free and unfettered Supreme Being's life. The gap between a high-level Supreme Being and a Supreme Being limit was too big, but the law of strength could make up for a large part of the gap. The gap between an early-stage Supreme Being and a mid-stage Supreme Being was far less than the gap between a high-level Supreme Being and a Supreme Being limit. Therefore, Huang Wenbing had the ability to fight above his level. At least, this was feasible before reaching the Supreme Being limit. However, no matter what law you've comprehended, there's only one outcome. The leading mid-stage Supreme Being's tone became colder and colder. "Die." As soon as his voice fell, the 4 of them rushed toward Huang Wenbing and Lin Feng as if they had already discussed it beforehand. One of the early-stage Supreme Being rushed toward Lin Feng, while the other 3 mid-stage Supreme Beings rushed toward Huang Wenbing, focusing on him. Obviously, in their eyes, Huang Wenbing was an opponent worthy of their attention. As for Lin Feng, he wasn't worth mentioning at all. Any early-stage Supreme Being could easily get rid of him. Berserker's first style, absolute strength. Huang Wenbing didn't dare to underestimate the three mid-stage supreme beings. He took a step forward, and the long saber at his waist was already unsheathed. There were no fancy moves, but a violent slash. The terrifying power gushed out, and the surrounding space was faintly distorted. Raging flames, burning God. Golden kingdom. Billowing waves. The three supreme beings also displayed their unique skills. A terrifying explosion instantly exploded. Rumble, the terrifying explosion blasted the Lien clan's equipment refining pavilion into smithereens. The fragmented building collapsed with a loud bang. Meng Tian and Yun Yunfei brought Ing Yi and Crown Prince Ing Yi out of the area ahead of time, dodging the terrifying explosion. Mid-stage supreme beings aren't as powerful as I thought. Huang Wenbing sneered as blood flowed from the corner of his mouth. He wiped it gently. Ing Yi said solemnly, I didn't expect this kid to be so powerful. However, so what if he was powerful? Facing the attacks of three mid-stage supreme beings at the same time, didn't he get injured in a single move? In contrast, the three mid-stage supreme beings only looked a little pale, but they were much better than Huang Wenbing. Whoosh! At this moment they heard a scream. When they turned to look, their eyes couldn't help but shrink. They saw that the early-stage supreme being who attacked Linfeng had a big hole in his chest. Blood was flowing out, and he was still in the posture of wielding his blade. However, his vitality was quickly draining away. In a breath, he stopped breathing and slowly fell to the side. No one expected that this seemingly simple mission would cause the death of an early-stage supreme being on the spot. A small figure circled in the air, and the blood on the surface of its body was instantly shaken into a blood mist before returning to Linfeng's shoulder. It's that bird! Ing Qing had long lost his calm and exclaimed. Ing Yi and the others also had ugly expressions as they stared at the bird. Originally, they didn't pay any attention to this seemingly harmless little bird. However, only now did they realize how terrifying this little bird was. No, this wasn't a little bird. It was a supreme being-level demon beast. A supreme-level monster beast, my god. Ing Qing sucked in a breath of cold air, and cold sweat broke out on his forehead. Including the young man next to him, Linfeng actually has two supreme-level monsters by his side. When he thought of what he did in the blacksmith shop yesterday, he felt a lingering fear. Supreme Meng Tian's expression was very serious, and he said, an early-stage supreme being monster beast is comparable to a mid-stage supreme being human. Yun Yunfei also became serious. We must delay this supreme-level monster beast. Otherwise, the three mid-stage supreme beings of the royal family won't be a match for this beast and that kid who comprehended the law of strength. Your Majesty, it seems that you have underestimated this Linfeng. Supreme Meng Tian looked deeply at Ing Yi. Ing Yi smiled bitterly. At this moment, he was already regretting his impulsiveness. However, since he had already made his choice, there was no use regretting it. He could only think of a way to make up for it. He said sincerely, Senior Meng Tian, Old Master Lien, I didn't expect Linfeng to have two supreme-level monsters by his side. Please help us. The two looked at each other and saw the bitter smile on each other's face. There's no other way. At this time, we have to take action. Supreme Meng Tian instantly unsheathed his exquisite sword. This was a supreme-level king weapon that Yun Yunfei had spent a lot of effort to refine. For this, he also owed Yun Yunfei a favor. Today, I will use this beast's blood as a sacrifice to my pure June sword. Hearing this, Ing Yi heaved a sigh of relief. The gaze he used to look at Linfeng became even colder. Your friend and your demonic beast are both being held back. I would like to see who else can save you. Boom. Boom! Boom! Deafening collision sounds kept coming from high up in the sky. From time to time, dazzling light flashed. Huang Wenbing and the three mid-stage supreme beings had already exchanged hundreds of blows, and the victor had yet to be decided. Supreme Meng Tian and Yun Yunfei looked at each other again, and with great tacit understanding, they rushed toward Lin Feng together. Go! As expected, the supreme-level monster beast on Lin Feng's shoulder turned into a shadow and flew toward them. Chapter 342. The battle between Huang Wenbing and the three mid-level Supremes wouldn't end anytime soon. Moreover, Huang Wenbing was a battle maniac to begin with. He hoped to hone himself through battle after battle. There weren't many opportunities to fight against three mid-level Supreme beings. Even if Lin Feng or Nuonuo went up to help, he wouldn't agree. On the other hand, the battle between Nono, Meng Tian, and Lien Yunfei should be over soon. However, Nono was naughty by nature. After being bored for so long, it finally met two opponents who could contend with it. It couldn't bear to kill them so easily. It planned to play with them for a while. As for Lin Feng, Nono and Huang Wenbing weren't worried about Lin Feng's safety at all. Huang Wenbing had seen with his own eyes how Lin Feng had single-handedly slaughtered all the experts of the Shui family as if he were slaughtering chickens and dogs. That shocking scene was something that he could not forget even to this day. If one were to compare the two of them to Nono, Lin Feng would undoubtedly be the strongest. Only those who had seen it with their own eyes would understand the terror of the mixed laws. When all the Supreme Being experts had joined the battle, Ying Yi and Ying Qing, the father and son pair, turned their gazes to Lin Feng. Their hatred for Lin Feng could be said to be bone-deep. To Ying Yi, it was Lin Feng who caused him to lose 3 9th-level powerhouses and more than 10 8th-level powerhouses. Apart from that, he also lost an early-stage Supremes. Although it wasn't enough to cause serious damage to the Great Qin Empire, it was still a serious injury that couldn't be ignored. To Ying Qing, it was Lin Feng who made his Youth Masters Tournament champion a little fake, causing his reputation to be tarnished and a flaw to appear in his perfect image. Lin Feng, surrender. Ying Yi's face was gloomy as he said coldly, "Your demon beasts and friends are all held back by my people. Who can save you now?" A cruel smile appeared on Ying Qing's face. Going against the imperial family of the Great Qin dynasty is the biggest mistake you have made in your life. Lin Feng glanced at them expressionlessly before turning his attention back to the battle between Nono, Huang Wenbing, and the enemy. However, he had no intention of intervening, nor was he worried that Nono and Huang Wenbing would be injured. It was as if they were unrelated to him. Men. When Ying Qing saw that Lin Feng had directly ignored him and his father, he became even more furious. He directly shouted, "Seize this child for me!" Yes. 2 rows of soldiers on the street immediately rushed over. There were about 40 soldiers in this group, and most of them were in the 6th or 7th order of cultivation. They were considered to be one of the more elite squads in the Emperor's personal army. They were well trained and had strict military discipline. Every movement they made was filled with an austere aura. As they ran, they gave off the feeling of a powerful army, full of impact. Facing such a group of soldiers, even a 9th-stage powerhouse would not dare to underestimate them. Kill! In the time it took for 3 breaths, the group of soldiers had already rushed up to Lin Feng. Ying Qing laughed sinisterly. "Lin Feng, prepare to die. As long as we can kill you, even if we lose an elementary Supreme Being, it will be worth it." Ying Yi's expression was ice-cold. A top-notch blacksmith who has surpassed Mu Wushuang is either a top-notch helper of the Great Qin dynasty or a great threat to the Great Qin dynasty. From the moment you chose to be my enemy, your fate has already been decided. Letting Lin Feng return to Zhao was equivalent to letting a tiger return to the mountain. He wasn't that stupid. He knew too well the rallying power of a top-notch blacksmith who had surpassed Mu Wushuang. If he let Lin Feng escape, the entire Great Qin dynasty would be destroyed by this person. This was something he absolutely could not allow. Even if he had to sacrifice an elementary supreme being, it would be worth it. One palm. Lin Feng glanced at Ing Yi and Ing Qing from afar and said indifferently, "What?" A trace of doubt appeared on Ing Yi and Ing Qing's faces. They were both baffled. However, in the next moment they understood what Lin Feng meant. Lin Feng opened his right palm and gently slapped at a group of soldiers who were charging at him. This slap didn't use any laws, and only 1/10 of his origin energy was used. However, it was precisely this simple palm strike that held back a great deal of power that sent a group of charging soldiers flying in an instant, as if they were ants. Pooh! Ah! Dozens of soldiers didn't have the slightest ability to resist and were directly sent flying. It was as if a tornado had swept them up and sent them flying back. Then, they smashed into the empty street not far away, causing the bluestone paved ground to crack. Bang! 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 One soldier after another fell, either smashing into the ground or smashing into the soldiers who had fallen first. In the time it took for a breath, not a single soldier was able to move. Lin Feng wasn't interested in whether these soldiers had all died or not. He shifted his gaze to Ing Yi and Ing Qing. Ing Yi turned pale with fright. He had never imagined that the seemingly thin and weak Lin Feng would actually possess such terrifying strength. He had miscalculated once again. Huang Wenbing comprehending the law of strength was his first miscalculation. Nua being a sovereign demonic beast was his second miscalculation. But these didn't count for much, because these factors were all within the range of his tolerance. It was very difficult for these factors to affect the final result. But at this moment, Lin Feng had displayed strength of at least the 9th step, which was what Ing Yi couldn't accept the most. Because at this moment, there was no one around him that he could use. If Lin Feng took this opportunity to kill him, he would definitely die. Not only him, but his eldest son, Ing Qing, would also have the same ending. How is this possible? Ing Yi's face was incomparably ugly. The situation had already gotten out of his control and was developing in a direction that was disadvantageous to him. Ing Qing was so scared that his face turned pale. He shouted, "Don't kill me!" Looking at Ing Qing's terrified appearance, Ing Yi wanted nothing more than to slap him to death. He was so angry that he wanted to die. How can a member of the great Qin Empire be so cowardly? Why did I choose him as the crown prince? At this moment, Lin Feng retracted his gaze and said to Nono and Huang Wenbing, "Have you played enough? If you have, come back." As soon as these words entered the ears of the man and the bird, Nono's speed suddenly soared. From the level of a mid-level supreme, it soared to the level of a peak high-level supreme. With a whoosh, it appeared dozens of feet away. In the next moment, it returned to Lin Feng's shoulder and shouted, "Boss, I haven't played enough yet." Meng Tian and Yun Yunfei were incomparably shocked by the speed Nono had displayed in an instant. What terrifying speed! If Nono had displayed such speed just now, the two of them would have probably been killed by Nono. Thinking of this problem, they couldn't help but break out in cold sweat. "Boss has spoken. I can't play with you guys anymore. Sorry." Huang Wenbing instantly separated from the 3 mid-level Supreme Masters and rushed toward Lin Feng's direction. The 3 mid-level Supreme Masters of the Imperial family were about to chase after them, but Ing Yi hurriedly said, "No need to chase." Now that the situation was out of his control, he had to ensure his own safety first before thinking about killing Lin Feng, Huang Wenbing, and Nono. Otherwise, even if he killed Lin Feng and the rest, it would be meaningless. The two sides separated and quickly returned to their respective camp. "Lin Feng, if you agree to submit to me now, I can pretend that nothing happened and still treat you as my distinguished guests," Ing Yi said in a deep voice. With 5 Supreme Being experts by his side, Ing Yi's tone became a bit more resolute. Lin Feng coldly snorted. "You can pretend that nothing happened, but I can't. Lin Feng, what do you mean? Ying Qing couldn't help but jump up and scold. Father magnanimously let you guys go, but you don't know how to be grateful. Do you really think that we are afraid of you? Ying Yi's expression was similarly gloomy as he said, Brat, I admit that I've underestimated you. However, if you think that just the two of you and that sovereign-level demon beast of yours can contend against the joint forces of 5 sovereigns, then you're gravely mistaken. I didn't think that you guys still haven't figured out the situation until now. Lin Feng couldn't help but shake his head. If I don't teach you guys a lesson, you guys will really think that you are some big shot. Boss is going to personally take action. Nono and Huang Wenbing immediately gloated at Ying Yi's group. No one knew better than them how terrifying Lin Feng's strength was. Lin Feng, don't be so arrogant. Just as Ying Qing said these words, he suddenly realized that Lin Feng's figure had suddenly disappeared, leaving behind only a transparent afterimage. Bang! 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 Accompanied by 5 ear-splitting collisions, the 5 Supreme Masters who were originally standing beside Ying Yi and Ying Qing were all sent flying without exception. They didn't even see how Lin Feng did it. They could only vaguely see a shadow flash by, and then a sharp pain suddenly came from their chests, and they lost consciousness. The battle only lasted for a moment, and then it was already over. Lin Feng's fighting strength was close to the limit of Supreme Masters. Even the free and unfettered Supreme was weaker than him, let alone these Supreme Masters in front of him. In Lin Feng's hands, the 5 Supreme Masters were like clay chickens and pottery dogs. He only needed to use 1/3 of his strength, and it was enough to easily deal with them. This was simply not a battle on the same level. So powerful! Although he had already seen how terrifying Lin Feng was, Huang Wenbing was still shocked. Last time at the Xing family, Lin Feng's speed was too fast and too sudden, so he didn't see it clearly at all. This time, he barely saw it clearly, but it was because of this that he was even more shocked. He actually used his elbows, fists, toes, knees, and head as weapons at the same time, almost attacking 5 Supreme Masters at the same time. This is too terrifying. He couldn't help but shiver. No wonder Boss never uses weapons. His body is his strongest weapon. This is too abnormal. Even more terrifying was that Lin Feng's strength and speed far exceeded his. How could he, a Supreme Master who had comprehended the law of strength, endure this? Ying Yi and Ying Qing, who were still shouting happily just now, widened their eyes and their expressions froze. Their biggest reliance, a total of 4 Supreme Masters and 1 Elementary Supreme Master, actually couldn't block Lin Feng's bare-handed attack. It was hard for them to imagine how powerful Lin Feng was. An advanced Supreme Being? Or the limit of Supreme Master? Just how much power did that skinny figure possess? Now, do you still want me to submit? Lin Feng looked at the two indifferently and said casually. The 5 Supreme Masters' lives were unknown, and there was no trace of movement. Ying Yi and Ying Qing swallowed a mouthful of saliva with difficulty. Only now did they realize how hard they had kicked the iron plate. Chapter 343. Now, 3 powerhouses of the 9th step, more than 10 powerhouses of the 8th step, dozens of elite soldiers, and 6 supreme powerhouses were either dead or injured. No one could stop Lin Feng. The only ones still standing were Ying Yi and Ying Qing, the father and son pair. Ying Yi was quite straightforward. He knew that he was powerless to reverse the situation and could only let Lin Feng deal with him. He straightforwardly said, "Speak. What will it take for you to let me go?" Although it was a bit embarrassing to say these words, it was better to lose face than to lose his life. He could now see that Lin Feng was not an existence he could provoke. Even if he had twice as many supreme powerhouses on his side, it would not change the outcome. Lin Feng said coldly, "Haven't you been clamoring for me to submit to you? Now I'll give you a chance. Submit to me and I'll let you go." Giving him a taste of his own medicine. Ying Yi had thought of many outcomes, but he never thought of such an outcome. Originally, he was the one who wanted Lin Feng to submit. Now it was Lin Feng who wanted him to submit. Unbeknownst to them, their positions had actually swapped. Submit. Ying Yi almost cursed out in anger, but when he thought of Lin Feng's strength, he suppressed it and said in a deep voice, "Impossible." He could lose face, but there had to be a limit. As the emperor of the great Qin Empire, if he submitted to Lin Feng, he would be cursed for the rest of his life. Even if he died in the future, he would become a negative example for the future generations. He would be the greatest disgrace of the great Qin Empire. He would be despised and ridiculed for generations. This was something he could not accept. "I'd rather die than submit." Ying Yi's face was gloomy, as black as the bottom of a pot. "Change your request." Lin Feng was too lazy to argue with him and said, "Submit or die. Choose for yourselves." Wasn't this scene very similar to the scene of Ying Yi forcing Lin Feng earlier? However, this time, the one who was forced to submit was Ying Yi himself. "You!" Veins appeared on Ying Yi's face, and his face was red with anger. "I submit, I submit." Ying Qing rushed to kneel on the ground in front of Ying Yi. As he kowtowed, he cried, "Mr. Lin, Lord Lin, Senior Lin, please spare my life. I promise I'll listen to you from now on. If you tell me to go east, I won't go west. If you tell me to kill a chicken, I won't kill a dog. No, I'm a dog, the most loyal and obedient dog. Master, please spare your most loyal dog." The invincible image of Lin Feng suppressing the 5 supreme masters with thunderous means had been deeply engraved in Ying Qing's heart. It had scared him out of his wit. He didn't care about anything else in order to survive. He wouldn't refuse even if Lin Feng made an even more outrageous request. Bastard! Ying Yi was so angry that smoke was coming out of his 7 orifices. He rushed over and kicked Ying Qing to the ground as he cursed, "I was really blind to have made a bastard like you the crown prince." Just cursing like this was not enough to vent his anger. He added a few more kicks, causing Ying Qing to scream miserably. Lin Feng frowned. "Enough." Ying Yi stopped and looked at Lin Feng. He said coldly, "Since it's already like this, do whatever you want to me. However, don't even think about making me submit to you." Life was like a game of chess. One careless move and the whole game would be lost. The only mistake he made was that he shouldn't have provoked Lin Feng. But now there was no way to return to the past. He could only accept his punishment. Even if Lin Feng wanted to kill him, he could only accept it. This was the world. The winner was the king and the loser was the bandit. No matter how much he said, it was useless. An emperor and a crown prince. The choices of the two were completely different. Since it's like this, then. Lin Feng looked at Ying Yi indifferently. With his strength and status, even if he spared Ying Yi, he wasn't afraid of the other party's revenge. However, if he didn't do anything, then in the future, anyone would dare to step on him. This precedent couldn't be set. Moreover, he wasn't a saint. Others were already trying to kill him. How could he remain indifferent? Just as he was speaking, the sound of horse hooves came from afar. An anxious voice came from afar, "Have mercy!" A familiar voice, a familiar Fergana horse. It's actually him. Lin Feng was startled. Young Master Pan, the young Master Pan he met outside the city. Very quickly, young Master Pan arrived beside Ying Yi. He knelt on one knee. "This son came late to save you. Father, please punish me." Ying Yi looked at young Master Pan with a complicated expression. After a long time, he sighed, "You shouldn't have come." Among his more than 10 sons, the 6th young Master Pan wasn't the worst, but also wasn't the most outstanding. It could only be said that he was barely satisfactory. However, at this time of crisis, those sons that he usually nurtured and valued greatly were like turtles, turning a blind eye to what was happening here. Instead, this sixth son that he didn't value much, actually risked his life to come here. How ironic! Although the imperial family was the most heartless, but this kind of result, he still found it hard to accept. However, the position of the sixth young master Ing Pan in his heart instantly rose to the first place. Father. All right, you don't need to say any more. I understand your intentions. Ingi waved his hand, then turned his head and looked at Lin Feng. Lin Feng, this matter has nothing to do with Pan. From the beginning to the end, Pan didn't participate in this matter. I hope you can let him go. As for Crown Prince Ing Ching, who was kicked to the ground by him, he didn't even look at him. Obviously, he was extremely disappointed with Ing Ching's previous actions. Young Master Pan didn't know what happened between Ing Yi and Lin Feng, but he could faintly guess that Lin Feng and Huang Wenbing had the absolute advantage in the current situation. Father, this son is willing to live and die with father. Young Master Pan said anxiously. Shut up. Ing Yi scolded in an unusually strict manner. I am your father. I have the final say here. Young Master Pan clenched his teeth and looked at Lin Feng from afar, then said, I'm sorry, father. This time, this son can't listen to you. After saying that, he stood up and bowed to Lin Feng, then said with an incomparably firm tone, Lord Lin, please forgive father. I'm willing to exchange a life for a life and accept death in place of father. You. Ing Yi was both gratified and angry. Idiot! Compared to Crown Prince Ing Ching, young Master Pan's performance was undoubtedly the other extreme. Idiot! Ing Ching sneered in his heart. Lin Feng said in surprise, You're really willing to exchange a life for a life and accept death in place of your father? Young Master Pan lowered his head and nodded lightly, but didn't say anything. I don't agree. Ing Yi looked straight at Lin Feng, as if he had already forgotten how terrifying Lin Feng was. Lin Feng, if there's anything, just come at me. Don't make things difficult for these juniors. I will take responsibility for my own actions. I don't need anyone to take the blame for me. Father. Young Master Pan's voice was filled with anxiety. Shut up. Ing Yi glared. The majesty of Great Qin's emperor was instantly revealed. He coldly stared at young Master Pan. If you still recognize me as your father, then listen to me. In this day and age, there were still people fighting to die. However, this was also the most enviable thing. Lin Feng didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He opened his mouth and said, All right, you guys stop fighting. Seeing the few people's gazes shifting over, Lin Feng muttered, Ing Pan, your father sent someone to deal with me. Logically speaking, I should kill him. However, you helped me before. I can't repay kindness with enmity. How about this? I'll give you face and spare your father this time. I'll even spare those few supreme beings. However, this matter was instigated by your father. Therefore, you should at least give some compensation, right? You're not going to kill us? Ing Yi opened his eyes wide in disbelief. He even thought that he was hallucinating. Young Master Pan was pleasantly surprised. It's true. Father, Lord Lin has really forgiven us. Ing Yi's mind went blank for a moment. Soon after, he couldn't help but bitterly laugh. Oh Pan, your face is really valuable. It directly exchanged for the lives of me and 5 supreme beings. A face was worth 6 lives. Moreover, they were the lives of Great Qin's emperor and 5 supreme beings. This wasn't an ordinary value. Father. Young Master Pan immediately looked at Ing Yi anxiously. He was afraid that Ing Yi would scold him. Seeing him like this, if it was in the past, Ing Yi would definitely frown and be extremely dissatisfied. However, at this time, he was filled with gratification. He smiled and said, Ha ha, silly child. No, he wasn't a silly child. The real silly child was lying on the ground beside them. Wasn't that right? At this time, Crown Prince Ing-ching was already dumbfounded. Even if he was beaten to death, he would never have thought that things would take such a turn. At the most crucial moment, young Master Pan had arrived. With the help of King Quanglon, Lin Feng had forgiven the Emperor and 5 Supreme Beings. In this way, even if he didn't die in Lin Feng's hands, he would definitely end up in an extremely miserable state. He didn't forget that when he was kowtowing and begging for mercy, Ingyi had almost kicked him to death. He had an urge to cry bitterly, "God, can you not play with people like this?" Lin Feng said, "Don't be so happy. I just said that you guys started this matter. You have to compensate something to express your sincerity, right? Compensation is what we should do." Ingyi regained the bearing and dignity of the ruler of a country, and even showed great courage. "Since Lord Lin is the #1 blacksmith in the world, then I will compensate Lord Lin with all the materials that the great Qin Empire has collected over the past 1,000 years. Among them, there are about 1,800 sets of rare materials and 200 sets of precious materials. These materials will all belong to Lord Lin. I wonder if Lord Lin is satisfied with this apology gift?" Although Lin Feng had given young Master Pan face and spared their lives, Ingyi didn't think that he would be able to get rid of Lin Feng with just some random things. If he didn't show enough sincerity and let Lin Feng feel that he was being perfunctory, then the consequences would be even worse. Moreover, he had taken out so many things. Wasn't he trying to curry favor with Lin Feng? It was fine if he didn't know before, but now that he knew that Lin Feng was not only the #1 blacksmith in the Xingfeng Plain, but also had the strength of a high-level Supreme Being or even a peak Supreme Being, if he still didn't know what to do, then he would really be a pig. Hearing this, Lin Feng immediately smiled, satisfied, very satisfied. Naturally, the more rare materials and precious materials, the better. He secretly praised in his heart. After this emperor was dealt a blow, he became much smarter. With this lesson, he will probably restrain himself a little in the future, right? P.S. This is the end of today's 3rd update. I will continue tomorrow. The day before yesterday, I was added by 2 people who read free books. They scolded me for writing bad books and urged me to update. Forget it, I don't want to say anything. Chapter 344. Lin Feng didn't stay in the Lian clan crafting pavilion for long and left with Huang Wenbing. Not long after, the 5 Supreme Being experts slowly woke up. As soon as the 3 mid-level Supreme Beings woke up, their expressions changed. "Oh no, Your Majesty!" Unexpectedly, Ingyi was right beside them. Hearing this, Ingyi smiled and said, "Don't worry, I'm fine." Seeing that Ingyi was fine, they heaved a sigh of relief. Then, they stood up with difficulty and looked around. "Where's Lin Feng?" "Lin Feng has already left." Ingyi sighed. "It's all thanks to Pan Er's plea. Otherwise, we wouldn't have been able to escape death today." The group looked at Ingyi in confusion. Ingyi didn't hide anything and told them everything he knew. For a moment, the way they looked at young Master Pan changed subtly. As for the Crown Prince, they didn't even look at him. Such a coward simply threw away the face of the great Qin. Even if Emperor Ingyi was willing to forgive the Crown Prince, they couldn't. Therefore, the position of Crown Prince no longer belonged to Ing-ching. It was just that time was too short, and they couldn't announce it to the world for a while. As for the new Crown Prince, they had already decided in their hearts. Apart from young Master Pan, they couldn't think of anyone else who was qualified to take on this great responsibility. Other things aside, just the fact that only young Master Pan appeared at the critical moment today was enough for them to make up their minds. Moreover, young Master Pan was familiar with Lin Feng. Even if it was just for Lin Feng's sake, The position of Crown Prince must be inherited by young Master Pan. Lin Feng. When mentioning Lin Feng, their expressions became complicated. Compared to Ying Yi and the others, they had a deeper understanding of Lin Feng's strength. The scene of Lin Feng's attack was something they would never forget for the rest of their lives. Supreme Meng Tian took a deep breath. No matter what, we must not provoke Lin Feng in the future. Yun Yunfei said in a deep voice. His battle strength is at least that of a high-level supreme being. I even suspect that his battle strength has reached the limit of a supreme being. The leader of the mid-level autarchs of the imperial clan sighed. From today onwards, the number of high-level autarchs of the Xingfeng Plain can be counted on one's fingers. They weren't fools. It was impossible for them to ask for more abuse after being abused once. Fortunately, young Master Pan had pleaded for them this time. Next time, they wouldn't be so lucky. At the same time, they vaguely guessed Lin Feng's identity in their hearts, but they didn't have any evidence for the time being, so they couldn't completely confirm their guesses. If he really is that person, then Great Qin has really kicked the biggest iron plate in the world. They couldn't help but laugh bitterly in their hearts. After a while, the few supreme beings left one after another, leaving Ying Yi and young Master Pan to clean up the mess. As for Crown Prince Ying Qing, he was taken away by Ying Yi's men and thrown into prison to be punished at a later date. When Lin Feng and Huang Wenbing returned to the gold lacquer blacksmith shop unscathed, Fu Shou Quan and the blacksmith shop's members were packing up the shop's things with low morale and gloomy expressions. It seemed that they were planning to move out. Seeing Lin Feng and Huang Wenbing slowly walk into the shop, the group of people looked at the two in disbelief. Obviously, they didn't expect that they could return here unscathed. Shopkeeper Fu, are you moving out? Lin Feng stopped and asked puzzledly. Fu Shou Quan smiled bitterly and said, Lord Lin, you don't know. We offended the 7th young master and crown prince. Sooner or later, we won't be able to keep this blacksmith shop. Instead of waiting for them to send people to deal with it, we might as well take the initiative to move out. Lin Feng said, if that's the reason, then you don't have to worry. That crown prince won't have a chance to deal with you in the future. Hearing this, Fu Shou Quan was half convinced and half doubtful. Why are you so sure, Lord Lin? He didn't think that Lin Feng could defeat the crown prince. After all, the crown prince was backed by the current emperor. In the entire Great Qin Empire, how many people dared to go against the emperor? The matter is a little complicated, and it's hard to explain in a short time. In short, if you trust me, you don't have to care about that crown prince. You'll understand in a few days. Lin Feng said as he walked towards the backyard. Of course, if you insist on moving out, then pretend that I didn't say anything. When Huang Wenbing passed by Fu Shou Quan, he patted his shoulder lightly. Don't worry, my boss didn't lie to you. That crown prince won't be able to jump around in the future. You don't have to worry about him taking revenge. After saying that, Huang Wenbing quickly followed Lin Feng into the backyard. Fu Shou Quan looked at the backs of the two people, unable to make a decision. Shopkeeper, are we still moving out? One of the blacksmith shop's members asked hesitantly. After a long silence, Fu Shou Quan gritted his teeth and said, We're not moving. At worst, we'll just be smashed by them again. When the blacksmith shop's members heard this, they immediately let out a sigh of relief, and a smile appeared on their faces. They had lived in the golden lacquer blacksmith shop for so long, and it could be said that this place was their second home. Moreover, this location was very good. If they moved out, it would be difficult to find a second place as suitable as this. Being able to stay was naturally for the best. But, what if the crown prince really takes revenge on us? What should we do then? A member asked weakly. He won't, I believe in Lord Lin. Fu Shou Quan said in a deep voice. Lord Lin and the others wouldn't lie to us for no reason. This won't benefit them at all. These words seemed to be an explanation for everyone, but it also seemed to be an explanation for himself. The next day, early in the morning, the Golden Lacquer blacksmith shop had just opened for business when a group of elite soldiers rushed in. From the looks of it, they should have been waiting outside the shop for a long time. Fu Shou Quan and the other blacksmiths felt their hearts skip a beat when they saw the group of soldiers entering the blacksmith shop. The leader was dressed in a top-notch robe, and he exuded an invisible aura of authority. His official rank was probably frighteningly high. Fu Shou Quan and the other blacksmiths felt their hearts skip a beat. A thought popped into their minds. Could it be that Lord Lin and Lord Huang were lying to us? Before they could speak, the person introduced himself. You must be shopkeeper Fu? I am Left Minister Luowan. Left Minister Luowan. Hearing these words, Fu Shou Quan and the blacksmith shop's members immediately trembled in fear. Left Minister, this was the #1 official in the entire Great Qin Empire. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that he was second only to one person and above tens of thousands. Even Crown Prince Ing Qing's position was slightly inferior. Only after the Crown Prince ascended to the throne would he be able to surpass the Left Minister's position. His Highness the Crown Prince actually managed to invite Lord Left Minister. Fu Shou Quan was so scared that his face turned pale, and his mind went blank. The blacksmith shop's members also trembled in fear and lowered their heads. However, Left Minister Luowan said, I was entrusted by His Majesty to personally deliver something to Lord Lin. May I ask if Lord Lin is here? As soon as these words were spoken, everyone's expression became very interesting, and they were all dumbfounded in place. Luowan frowned and repeated his question. May I ask if Lord Lin is here? Fu Shou Quan didn't know what had happened, but he quickly nodded. Yes, Lord Lin is in the backyard. Luowan let out a sigh of relief, and his expression relaxed a bit. He revealed a smile and said, Then I'll have to trouble shopkeeper Fu to inform him that Left Minister Luowan is here to deliver the promised item under His Majesty's order. Please accept it, Lord Lin. Fu Shou Quan's mind was in a trance. He nodded, not knowing how he walked to the backyard. When he arrived at the backyard, he slowly regained consciousness, and a look of shock appeared on his face. Even His Majesty has sent Lord Left Minister to deliver something to Lord Lin. He sucked in a breath of cold air. Who the hell is he? Is he really just a 5-star craftsman genius? Left Minister Luowan was still waiting outside, so Fu Shou Quan didn't dare to tarry. He put away the shock in his heart and quickly walked to Lin Feng's room, knocking on the door. After a while, Lin Feng walked out. Upon seeing Lin Feng, Left Minister Luowan bowed deeply and said with great respect, Lowly Minister Luowan greets Lord Lin. This scene once again caused everyone's jaws to drop. Lin Feng waved his hand, not at all uncomfortable with Luowan's respect. He said indifferently, Where are the items? Luowan hurriedly said, They're outside. I'll send someone to bring them in. No need. Lin Feng immediately walked out of the smithy's door. Luowan shut his mouth and obediently followed behind Lin Feng. Outside the room, Lin Feng probed with his mental energy. The number was the same as what His Majesty had promised. He smiled in satisfaction and waved his hand, causing the dozen or so boxes to disappear. This scene caused Luowan to be extremely shocked. A spatial ring. Although he had never seen a spatial ring before, as the Left Minister of the Great Qin Empire, he was quite knowledgeable and knew some secrets that ordinary people didn't know. Moreover, spatial rings weren't much of a secret, so he had naturally heard of them. However, something that he thought only existed in legends had actually appeared in front of him. No wonder he was so shocked. All right, I've taken the items. You can all go back. Lin Feng walked back into the smithy. Luowan originally wanted to curry favor with Lin Feng, but since Lin Feng had ordered him to leave, he didn't dare to stay. He respectfully responded and hurriedly left with a group of soldiers to report back to the imperial palace. After receiving the materials sent by His Majesty, Lin Feng returned to his room and closed his eyes. His consciousness once again entered Space 1 and began to attack the 7th stage of the ultimate escape. In the smithy, Fu Shouquan and the other members of the smithy were in a daze. They stood there in a daze and didn't make a sound for a long time. Their minds were filled with the image of left Prime Minister Luo Wen's respectful attitude towards Lin Feng, as well as that nauseating hypocritical smile. As the left Prime Minister of the Great Qin dynasty, Luo Wen had never fawned over Lin Feng like this, even when facing the Emperor of the Great Qin dynasty, Ying Yi. Could it be that Lin Feng's status was even nobler than that of His Majesty? Fu Shouquan swallowed a mouthful of saliva and murmured after a long while, "It seems that an extraordinary person has come to our gold lacquer smithy. P.S. First update. Smithy VIP Group. 168605329 Ordinary Smithy Group. 204276549. Chapter 345. 2 days passed in the blink of an eye. When the sun rose from the horizon, Salty City was covered in a red coat. The saying, "Sunrise is more red than fire, spring comes and the river water is as green as blue," was probably referring to the scene in front of them. Last night, many people couldn't sleep, because the day of Jing Yuren's performance was just around the corner. Thinking that they would soon be able to hear Jing Yuren play the zither, the people in the city were so excited that they couldn't sleep. The next morning, countless pairs of eyes had dark circles under their eyes, but they were still full of energy and didn't feel tired at all. It was as if they were drenched in chicken blood. Each and every one of them was excited, and their eyes were filled with anticipation. Today, all the shops were closed, not receiving any guests. Of course, there would be no guests coming. Golden Lacquer Blacksmith Shop. Early in the morning, the blacksmith shop's door was opened. Fu Shouquan and a group of blacksmith shop members were sitting in the blacksmith shop, waiting. However, when the door was opened for a while, someone came to the door. "I'm sorry, our gold lacquer blacksmith shop is not open today, please." A young girl in charge of sales had just started to speak when she stopped. Her cute eyes were wide open, and the latter half of her sentence was stuck in her throat for a long time. At this time, the rest of the people also looked over. However, when they saw it, they couldn't sit still anymore. Everyone got up and knelt down in fear. "This commoner greets your Majesty." They saw Emperor Ying Yi's figure standing outside the blacksmith shop. Behind him stood young Master Pan, left Prime Minister Luo Wen, and the others. To his left and right stood Meng Tian, Yun Fei, and the 3 exalted elders of the imperial family. They practically included the most respected group of people in the Grand Qin Empire. Such a lineup almost scared Fu Shouquan and the others silly. "Your Majesty." "Young Master Pan." "Left Prime Minister." "Right Prime Minister." "Honorable Meng Tian." "Honorable Elder Yun Fei." Every time they saw a person, they were shocked. In the end, their hearts almost jumped out of their throat. Emperor Yingyi waved his hand. "Everyone, please rise." Only then did Fu Shouquan and the others stand up shakily. They lowered their heads and didn't dare to look at the emperor. Otherwise, they couldn't guarantee that they wouldn't faint. "You must be shopkeeper Fu, right? Today, I came here specifically to invite Senior Lin and Senior Huang to the Sad Wind Flower Stream to listen to Jing Yuren's performance. Please inform Lord Lin." Ying Yi was extremely polite. He didn't feel that it was shameful for an emperor to say these words. His face was calm as he calmly stated his goal. Hearing this, Fu Shouquan and the others were stunned. "Lord Lin." His Majesty actually addressed Lord Lin as such. Waves of shock surged in their hearts. Although they knew that Lin Feng's identity was not simple, they did not expect that even the emperor would respectfully address him as Lord Lin. even Meng Tian, old man Yun Fei, and the others were obediently guarding here. This was simply unbelievable. Soon, Fu Shouquan reacted and immediately said, "Your Majesty, please wait for a moment. This commoner will inform Lord Lin." He quickly walked to the backyard. His heart was abnormally excited. "Your Majesty actually knows about me, Fu Shouquan. I, Fu Shouquan, have not lived in vain." The other members of the blacksmith shop respectfully stood in place with their heads bowed. They didn't even dare to breathe loudly for fear of angering the emperor. Backyard. Lin Feng didn't wait for Fu Shouquan to knock on the door. He opened the door and walked out with a smile. "Senior Lin, no need to say any more. I already know." Lin Feng waved his hand. He was even more satisfied with Emperor Ying Yi. Although there was a little conflict between him and Ying Yi before, he was still quite satisfied with Ying Yi's arrangement. The sad wind flower stream was fine. Since someone invited him, there was no need to hide in the backyard of the blacksmith shop. Anyway, it wasn't troublesome. Soon, Lin Feng and Huang Wenbing walked out of the backyard together. Fu Shouquan carefully followed behind the two. In his heart, he was guessing, who are Senior Lin and Senior Huang? He didn't believe that Lin Feng was really just a 5-star blacksmith from Zhao country. No matter how powerful a 5-star blacksmith was, it was impossible to receive such treatment. Unfortunately, after pondering for a long time, he still couldn't guess Lin Feng and Huang Wenbing's identity. He was just a small blacksmith shop manager. His knowledge was shallow, and his understanding of the wind punishment plane was only at the most superficial level. Naturally, it was impossible for him to guess Lin Feng and Huang Wenbing's identity. Outer yard. "Senior Lin! Senior Lin! Senior Lin!" Respectful and fawning voices sounded, pulling Fu Shouquan and the other blacksmith shop members back from their thoughts. They fell into shock again. Lin Feng didn't put on airs with them. He nodded and smiled. "Good morning, everyone." Then, he smiled at Ying Yi and said, "Coincidentally, we also wanted to go to the sad wind flower stream to listen to Jing Yuan play. Unfortunately, we couldn't book a seat or two. I didn't expect Great Qin's Majesty to be so considerate. Thank you. Senior Lin is too polite. It's my honor to invite Senior Lin and Senior Huang to enjoy the heavenly music." Ying Yi smiled and said, "Senior Lin, Senior Huang, please. Then we won't be polite. Great Qin's Majesty, please." Lin Feng nodded and walked out of the blacksmith shop. Huang Wenbing followed behind. When he passed by Ying Yi, he looked at him with deep meaning. "At least you know what's good for you." Ying Yi looked down and pretended not to hear. Although Huang Wenbing's strength couldn't compare to Lin Feng's, he wasn't someone he could offend casually. After walking out of the blacksmith shop, the group went straight to the sad wind flower stream. The group was like a myriad of stars surrounding the moon. The 3 supreme consecrators of the imperial family opened the way in front. Huang Wenbing, Emperor Ying Yi, Supreme Meng Tian, Lien Yunfei, and a few others accompanied them. Behind them were the left minister, the right minister, and other high-ranking officials of Great Qin, as well as young Master Pan and a few other ninth-stage powerhouses. Although the gold lacquer blacksmith shop was diagonally opposite the sad wind flower stream, the sad wind flower stream wasn't located on the side of the street. Instead, it was connected by a wide alley diagonally opposite the gold lacquer blacksmith shop. It was a distance of about 100 meters. From the entrance of the sad wind flower stream, one would first have to pass through a large lotus pond. Then, they would have to pass through several beautiful gardens and elegant pavilions before reaching the entrance of the sad wind flower stream. At this time, many people had already arrived at the sad wind flower stream. Every one of them had an extraordinary status. Some were 5-star or 6-star weapon refiners, some were 9th-stage earth warriors, 9th-stage earth mages, and 8th-stage earth mages. There were also people like the presidents of large merchant guilds that spanned across the 3 empires. There were even some famous top mercenary groups in the Greenwood continent, as well as the president of the Craftsmen's Guild. What was even more shocking was that there were actually people from Zhao country and Han dynasty among them. Just the supreme powerhouses alone numbered more than 10. In short, every single person here was a reputable big shot. Every single one of them was a famous big shot. This could be said to be a huge banquet that gathered all the big shots from all over the Greenwood continent. Only Qingfeng College, Zhao country's imperial family, and the 8 great families didn't show up. Currently, the person with the highest status in the sad wind flower stream was the only high-rank supreme present, Nirvana Sovereign. However, Nirvana Sovereign's temperament had always been proud and aloof. Very few people could enter his eyes. Moreover, he had 2 sworn brothers. One of them was also a high-rank supreme, while the other was about to break through to the high-rank supreme. Therefore, he was even less interested in paying attention to outsiders. Outsiders were very clear about his temperament. Naturally, they wouldn't try to curry favor with him and invite a snub. Moreover, their status was too low compared to Nirvana Sovereign. They really didn't have the confidence to talk to Nirvana Sovereign. Other than Nirvana Sovereign's place, which was a bit cold and cheerless, the other places in the sad wind flower stream had a harmonious atmosphere. Everyone had a smile on their faces and a bit of expectation in their eyes. They held their teacups and talked in low voices while waiting for Jingyuan to appear. Great Qin's emperor has also arrived. Everyone looked at the door with a smile on their faces. No one knew who said that. No matter what, this was Great Qin's territory. Great Qin's emperor was the host. Moreover, Great Qin's royal family's strength wasn't weak at all. Moreover, Meng Tian and Lien Yunfei were supporting Great Qin. Therefore, Ying Yi was definitely a very powerful existence. Even those supremes didn't dare to underestimate Ying Yi. After all, Ying Yi had a total of 5 supremes. Among them, 4 were intermediate supremes. The only elementary supremes was a top-notch blacksmith. His status was even higher than the other supremes. Everyone stood up and said with a smile, "Greetings, Your Majesty." Ying Yi also smiled and said, "Everyone, there's no need to be so polite." Then, he said to Lin Feng with a slightly respectful tone, "Lord Lin, we're here." Before Lin Feng could speak, Meng Tian smiled and said, "Lord Lin, Jingyuan should be here soon. Let's go and sit down first." "Lord Lin, if you don't mind, you can sit in my seat. It's relatively close to the platform." Lien Yunfei didn't want to fall behind. In front of Lin Feng, they wouldn't let go of any chance to add points to themselves. They also didn't care about what others thought of them. Ying Yi wanted to mend his relationship with Lin Feng. Meng Tian purely wanted to build a good relationship with him. Lien Yunfei hoped to get some pointers from Lin Feng so that his blacksmithing skills could be improved further. In this world, if there was anyone who could help him, it would be Lin Feng. They felt that their actions were reasonable. Little did they know that the surrounding people were stunned. "Who is this young man? Lord Lin? Why haven't I heard of him before?" His Majesty, Senior Meng Tian, and Old Master Lien are actually trying to curry favor with him. Looking at his bone age, this kid is only 22 years old. Could he be the young master of an incredible family? Could he be the young master of one of the 8 great families? For a moment, everyone's gaze shifted to Lin Feng. Nirvana Prime sat alone on a wooden chair beside the platform. He held a teacup and took a sip. At this time, he felt that the surrounding people were acting strangely. The lively, sorrowful wind flower stream seemed to have fallen into a temporary silence. A trace of doubt flashed through his eyes. He turned his head with interest and followed everyone's gaze to the entrance of the sorrowful wind flower stream. However, when he looked, he almost dropped the teacup in his hand. "It's him." He looked at Lin Feng with incomparable shock. With a whoosh, he stood up, put down the teacup, and walked straight to Lin Feng. "Blacksmith VIP Group, 168605329 Blacksmith VIP Group, 204276549. Chapter 346. At first, no one noticed the commotion on Nirvana Prime's side. However, when Nirvana Prime passed through the crowd and gradually approached Lin Feng, everyone finally reacted. The low and shallow discussions in the surroundings immediately disappeared. Everyone's gaze shifted from Lin Feng to Nirvana Prime. Everyone was puzzled by Nirvana Prime's actions. Why did he suddenly stand up and walk towards Lin Feng? Could it be that Lin Feng was related to him in some way? If I remember correctly, Nirvana Prime has always been a lone wolf. Occasionally, he would only come into contact with his two brothers. However, his two brothers don't include this Lord Lin, right? I remember very clearly that of his two brothers, one is a high-level prime, Star Prime, and the other is a mid-level prime, Firmament Prime. As for Star Prime and Firmament Prime, their surnames aren't Lin at all. While everyone was guessing, Nirvana Prime was getting closer and closer to Lin Feng. Lin Feng looked at Nirvana Prime in confusion. He didn't remember having any interactions with this expert whose cultivation was unfathomable. However, looking at the other party's actions, it was obvious that he was coming for him. This made him even more puzzled. However, he was still very confident. Even if the other party was an enemy, he wasn't afraid. With his current strength, even if the enemy was a prime at the limit, he was confident that he could escape. If the enemy was only a high-level prime, although he wasn't confident that he could kill the other party, he was still very confident that he could defeat the other party. Lin Feng watched quietly as Nirvana Prime approached. He did not make a sound and waited silently. Ying Yi, Prime Meng Tian, Lian Yunfei, and the others all stopped. They were all knowledgeable people. Even if they hadn't seen Nirvana Prime with their own eyes, they knew about him through other channels. There were very few high-level primes. Every high-level prime had a strong and unique temperament, so they could still easily guess Nirvana Prime's identity. They looked at each other and then looked at Nirvana Prime thoughtfully. Under everyone's gazes, Nirvana Prime quickly walked in front of Lin Feng. His face that was like 10,000 years of ice actually revealed a miraculous smile as he said with a slightly respectful tone, "Principal Lin." In an instant, everyone was petrified. Was this still Nirvana Prime? Was this still the arrogant and cold Nirvana sovereign they knew? That smile and that respectful tone made everyone unable to connect the person in front of them with the Nirvana sovereign in their memories. In the next moment, their gazes towards Lin Feng were filled with bewilderment. Who exactly was he? Why were Ying Yi, Meng Tian, Yunfei, and the others fawning over him? Even the renowned Nirvana sovereign was so respectful to him. Lord Lin, Principal Lin, surnamed Lin, for some reason, they felt a sense of familiarity, but they couldn't remember who this person was. Suddenly, a low exclamation sounded, "I remember now!" His voice was so loud that it made the people around him a little dissatisfied. However, they were also very curious as to what he had thought of that made him lose his composure. However, this person did not pay attention to everyone's curiosity. Instead, he walked towards Lin Feng emotionally. "I, Situ Liang, greet Principal Lin." His voice was trembling, not because he was afraid, but because he was excited. This could be seen from the excited smile on his face that could not be concealed. Lin Feng never thought that someone would actually recognize him. He smiled and cupped his hands towards Situ Liang. "Greetings, Mr. Situ." Then, he looked at Nirvana Sovereign and asked in confusion, "Please forgive me for not being able to recognize you. I haven't asked for your esteemed name yet." Nirvana Sovereign was not angry at all. Instead, he smiled and said, "Principal Lin might not recognize me, but Principal Lin must recognize Star Sovereign, right?" Lin Feng nodded. "Senior Star Sovereign has helped me a lot, and is now a teacher in Qinfeng College. I naturally recognize him. Star Sovereign is my second brother. Nirvana Autark still had a gentle smile on his face. Star Autark, Sky Autark, and I were once sworn brothers. I am the eldest, Star Autark is the second, and Sky Autark is the third. Lin Feng came to a realization, so it's Senior Nirvana. No. Principal Lin, you can just call me Nirvana Sovereign. Don't call me Senior. Nirvana Sovereign was shocked. Others might not know, but with his relationship with Star Sovereign had revealed most of Lin Feng's situation to him. Thus, he knew very well that not only did Lin Feng have 100% success rate in refining the 3-rune spiritual armor, his strength was also not inferior to Unfettered Sovereign. Moreover, he had a terrifying Sovereign Stage demonic beast by his side. Although it was only a low-level Sovereign Stage demonic beast, its battle prowess was close to that of a high-level Sovereign. Most importantly, Lin Feng had 3 terrifying Earth Saint experts standing behind him. They were real Earth Saints, legendary Earth Saints. He could ignore Unfettered Sovereign, Fluttering Snow Sovereign, and the others. He could even ignore Peak Sovereign experts, but he could not ignore Earth Saints. Even if they were only low-level Earth Saints, they were terrifying existences standing at the top of the pyramid of Xingfeng Plain. Lin Feng waved his hand. My cultivation is inferior to seniors, and my age is also inferior to seniors. Why can't I call you senior? Seeing that Nirvana Sovereign still wanted to refuse, Lin Feng directly said, This matter is settled. Senior Nirvana, you don't have to say anything more. He paused for a moment, then changed the topic. Senior Nirvana, do you know Jing Yuren's background? Although he was changing the topic, he was indeed very curious about Jing Yuren's identity. However, the result was beyond his expectations. Nirvana Sovereign shook his head. I don't know. You don't know? Lin Feng was surprised. That's right. Nirvana Sovereign said solemnly. Although I met her once in Dan City, she gave me an unfathomable impression. Let's put it this way, I can't see through her at all. However, what I can be sure of is that the sound she makes when she plays does have the miraculous effect of helping people break through. I only listened to one of her songs, and the bottleneck I've been stuck at for many years actually showed signs of loosening. His expression became serious. I suspect that she might be a Peak Sovereign. Of course, he actually had a guess in his heart, but he did not dare to say it out loud because it would be too frightening. Although everyone knew that Earth Saints existed in Xingfeng Plain, very few people had actually seen them. Therefore, everyone still held a trace of reverence towards Earth Saints in their hearts. Lin Feng looked pensive. If that's the case, I really made the right choice in coming here. The surrounding people did not listen carefully to the two's conversation, because they had already remembered who Lin Feng was. Through the initial conversation between Nirvana Sovereign and Lin Feng, the way Nirvana Sovereign addressed Lin Feng, and the Qingfeng College that Lin Feng mentioned, everyone immediately came to a realization and guessed Lin Feng's identity. Dean Lin, Qingfeng College. Who else could making Meng Tian Sovereign, Yun Fei, Nirvana Sovereign, Situ Liang, and the others be so respectful towards him other than that mysterious Dean Lin? He's Dean Lin? How is it possible? How can he be so young? Shouldn't Dean Lin be a white-haired old man? How can he be a 22-year-old young man? Is he really the Dean Lin who called upon Unfettered Sovereign, Fluttering Snow Sovereign, Star Sovereign, and dozens of other sovereigns to work together with Greenwood Continent's sovereigns to kill the invading sovereigns from Eternal Continent? Why doesn't he look like him at all? Everyone's hearts were in a perilous situation. Even Meng Tian Sovereign, Yun Fei, Young Master Pan, and the others were stunned. Of all the people present, only Nirvana Sovereign recognized Lin Feng. If it weren't for Nirvana Sovereign's reminder, no one would have been able to recognize Lin Feng's identity. However, when they saw Lin Feng in person, they found it hard to accept. Lin Feng was too young. Judging from his bone age, he was only 22 years old. They couldn't connect such a young person with the legendary peerless hero, Dean Lin. As for Ying-yi, he was both shocked and secretly glad that he was lucky. So he's that Dean Lin. No wonder. Ying-yi bitterly smiles in his heart. We actually went against Principal Lin before. This courage, even we somewhat admire ourselves. However, when he thought about it again, he was drenched in sweat and felt a lingering fear. Losing to Dean Lin is not an injustice. Young Master Pan stared at Lin Feng with his eyes wide open. He never would have thought that the person he accidentally met would actually be the world-renowned Dean Lin. Meng Tian Sovereign, Yun Yunfei, and the others were even more afraid. They didn't forget that there were dozens of sovereigns behind Dean Lin. When Lin Feng's identity was revealed, the people nearby immediately came over. They all had modest smiles on their faces and tried to curry favor with him. I'm the leader of the Whirlwind Mercenary Group, Long Kuan. Greetings, Dean Lin. I'm the president of the Craftsmen's Guild's branch, Gu Feng. Greetings, Dean Lin. I'm the president of the Morning Light Chamber of Commerce, Qin Feng. Greetings, Dean Lin. For a moment, Lin Feng was submerged in the sea of people. His ears were filled with respectful flattery. As the saying went, one doesn't slap a smiling face. Moreover, these people had no enmity with Lin Feng. Lin Feng didn't want to embarrass them, so he could only nod and respond to them. The surrounding people were also very tactful and didn't pester Lin Feng too much. They didn't want to leave a bad impression in Lin Feng's heart. They didn't want to be meritorious, but they didn't want to make any mistakes. They didn't have to climb up to Lin Feng, but they also didn't want Lin Feng to hate them. At the very least, they still had to show the proper etiquette. After responding to a circle, Lin Feng's mouth and tongue were dry. He really wasn't suitable for this kind of social scene. Fortunately, the crowd was more reasonable and knew when to advance and retreat. This gave Lin Feng a chance to breathe. Although Jing Yuren was about to appear, the crowd's attention was obviously not on her. They talked in low voices, as if they had returned to the scene just now. However, their eyes would occasionally sweep over Lin Feng. Their eyes flickered, and no one knew what they were thinking. The surrounding people had their own thoughts. They didn't even care about Jing Yuren, who was about to appear. This was the day when Jing Yuren played the zither. However, when Lin Feng appeared, he snatched away Jing Yuren's limelight and became the most eye-catching existence among the many big shots in the Sad Wind Flower Stream. P.S. First update. Crafting VIP Group. 168605329. Full subscription required to join. Crafting VIP Group. 204276549. Chapter 347. The sorrowful wind flower stream was quite spacious. Although there were many people and it was slightly crowded, it was not to the point where there was no place to stand. On the contrary, the streets and alleys around the sorrowful wind flower stream were extremely crowded. Everyone wanted to obtain an opportunity to break through their current realm. As for who would be able to break through in the end, it would depend on their luck. The blue sky was clear and the spring breeze was warm. The sorrowful wind flower stream was filled with the fragrance of flowers. It was intoxicating. "Boss, she's here," Huang Wenbing suddenly said. However, his tone immediately became strange. "It's her." "Who was it?" Lin Feng followed Huang Wenbing's gaze and was also stunned. "It's the person we met at the east gate of Dan City." He clearly remembered that Huang Wenbing had said that this woman was quite beautiful. He never thought that she was Jing Yuren. However, she is just like what Senior Nirvana said. Her strength is unfathomable. Lin Feng's expression became serious. When they first met this woman, he and Huang Wenbing did not notice anything special about her. They thought that she was just an ordinary rich family's daughter. Now, it was proven that she was not a rich family's daughter. She was a super strong warrior with unfathomable strength. Not to mention other things, just her speed and methods were not something that Linfeng could do. In addition, Linfeng could not see through her cultivation. This was enough to explain a lot of problems. High up in the sky, a woman in a blue petal-like fur coat and tight mink shorts slowly floated down. Her beautiful face, elegant, and otherworldly temperament made her seem like a fairy that had descended to the mortal world. Once she appeared, she attracted everyone's attention. So beautiful! This phrase appeared in everyone's mind. However, towards such a holy fairy, they did not have any thoughts of blasphemy. Instead, they respected her from the bottom of their hearts. She stopped about 300 feet from the ground and looked down. Then, she floated in the air. Her slender fingers slowly opened and a 7-stringed crouching dragon zither appeared in her hand. Her black eyes that were outlined by her black eyelashes blinked. Her 10 slender, white fingers rested on the 7 dragon-like strings of the zither. From beginning to end, she didn't say a word. Instead, she focused on the zither of the crouching dragon. The 7-string zither of the crouching dragon was the name that people gave to this 7-string zither. As for its original name, no one knew. Jing Yuan had never mentioned it before. However, this zither was not ordinary. Normal people might not be able to tell, but any 6-star blacksmith would be able to tell what was special about it. The surface of the zither was emitting a weak and gentle white light, like a firefly in the night. It was also like a happy little fairy. Furthermore, there was a strange fluctuation that was faintly discernible. It was definitely not ordinary. It's about to start. Nobody was surprised by this. They already knew that Jing Yuan was always like this when she played the zither. Their expressions turned serious. No matter what, this opportunity was hard to come by. They wouldn't waste such a great opportunity just because they were distracted. Without any prelude or explanation, Jing Yuan's slender fingers moved gently and the melodious sound spread out. At the same time, the zither of the 7-string zither of the crouching dragon emitted a soft light that floated down. Clang, clang. It was a very simple melody that didn't require any advanced techniques. It wasn't hard for normal people to learn it. However, it was this simple melody that seemed to have a magical power. Immediately, everyone was immersed in it and couldn't pull themselves out. If one looked closely, it wasn't hard to notice that every time Jing Yuan plucked the strings, there would be some soft light emitted. It was like the sunlight on a lake that was blown by a breeze. Linfeng was shocked. However, before he could express his surprise, he shut his mouth. He felt that his mind had suddenly become incomparably clear, and the origin energy in his body had actually started to circulate on its own. Similarly, his spiritual energy had also inexplicably increased. However, these were not the main points. What truly moved him was that he seemed to be in a peculiar world. Or rather, his consciousness had entered a peculiar world. This world had slowly evolved from nothing to existence, from birth to destruction. It wasn't just Linfeng. Everyone around him, even those outside the sorrowful wind flower stream, seemed to be hypnotized. They were immersed in the melody. It was just that everyone felt something different from the rhythm. Is this sound really that nice? Nono looked at everyone around her who seemed to be mesmerized. She couldn't help but tilt her head. Strange, why don't I feel anything? Pulling out the evolution of the world? Linfeng's mental world was undergoing an unknown change. His consciousness was also in an extremely clear and hazy state. Time, space, life, soul, power, amplitude, gravity. Words appeared in his mind one after another. They were either flashes of inspiration or appeared inexplicably. Time is the arrangement of the world's birth and death. It is endless. It has no beginning or end. It will never stop. Space is boundless and eternal. Life is the structure of matter. It is also a process. In the evolution of the world, Lin Feng could clearly feel the operation of various laws. The laws of time, space, and life allowed the birth, growth, and destruction of the world to achieve a perfect balance. He could clearly feel the existence of the 7 supreme laws. Through the influence of the 7 supreme laws on the world, he slowly understood the true essence of the 7 supreme laws. However, other than the 7 supreme laws, although he could feel the existence of the other laws, he couldn't clearly grasp their operation trajectory. He could only vaguely feel that these laws existed in dependence on the 7 supreme laws. Only with the 7 supreme laws' structure would there be other laws to fill in. His understanding of the 7 supreme laws became clearer and clearer. It was an inexplicable enlightenment. In the outside world, what Lin Feng didn't notice was that the gentle light spots emitted from the 7-stringed crouching dragon zither in Jing Yuren's arms were flying towards him and entering his body. Most of the others could only attract 1 or 2 specks of light, and the supreme martial artists could only attract a dozen or so specks of light at most. Meanwhile, Lin Feng had attracted countless specks of light, forming a river of light, causing his surroundings to be enveloped by a gentle and sacred light, as if it was a boundless river of stars, extremely beautiful. Lin Feng's situation suddenly formed a huge contrast with the other people's situation, causing him to instantly stand out. The beautiful figure in the sky was stunned. She looked at Lin Feng, who was in the center of the light spots, in surprise. "It's him," Jing Yuren murmured silently. She recognized Lin Feng. At this moment, no one could understand the shock in this fairy-like woman's heart. She continued to pluck the zither and retracted her gaze. She lowered her head to look at the 7-stringed crouching dragon zither. She was neither happy nor sad. However, the 7-stringed crouching dragon zither, which was originally shining with a gentle light, became dimmer and dimmer. It lost more and more light spots, and its surface became dimmer and dimmer. It was like a shell that had lost its soul. After an unknown period of time, the 7-stringed crouching dragon zither finally lost its luster. It could no longer emit a single light spot. "Pa!" A crisp sound was heard. The 7-stringed crouching dragon zither actually shattered and turned into dust. "Sigh." Jing Yuren sighed softly. She looked at Lin Feng reluctantly. "When I was born, you weren't born. When you were born, I was already old. I hate that you were born later than me. I hate that I was born too early. Maybe we are really not fated to be together." She once made a beautiful vow to the 7-stringed crouching dragon zither. However, it was a pity that the vow had already been eroded by time. Even if the 7-stringed crouching dragon zither really shattered and turned into dust, she still wouldn't be able to fulfill her promise. Retracting her gaze, Jing Yuren's silhouette flashed and disappeared into the sky. It was like a broken dream. After a long while, the people below finally woke up. When they looked up again, she was nowhere to be seen. Lin Feng slowly opened his eyes. There was a faint smile on his face. "So that's how it is." These 4 words fully explained his gains. Nono blinked. "Boss, what are you talking about?" Lin Feng patted its head and smiled. "I finally understand what the mixed laws are." Moreover, his comprehension of the mixed laws had improved, and he had a better understanding of the progress of his comprehension of the laws. He was no longer as hazy and unclear as before. From now on, he had a specific direction to work towards. He would no longer be like a headless fly flying around randomly and doing useless work. Hearing this, Huang Wenbing asked curiously, "Boss, what laws are they?" "Time, space, life, soul, strength, amplitude, gravity." Lin Feng listed out the 7 strongest laws in one breath. Among them, I've comprehended 15% of the time and space laws, 10% of the life, soul, strength, and gravity laws, and 0.9% of the amplitude laws. He had a satisfied smile on his face. The gains this time were far beyond his imagination. Nono's eyes were wide open. 7 strongest laws. Huang Wenbing's mouth was also wide open. A mixed law formed by the 7 strongest laws. Wasn't this kind of mixed law a little too terrifying? Moreover, the number of people who had comprehended the hybrid laws was pitifully small. Most of these people had comprehended no more than 3 types of laws, and the most outstanding ones had comprehended 4 types of laws. Those who had comprehended 5 types of laws could be counted on one's fingers. As for those who had comprehended 6 types of laws, there was simply no one who had comprehended 7 types of laws. Even in Nono's inherited memories, there was no such case. But Linfeng's mixed law not only fused 7 laws, but these 7 laws were also the 7 strongest laws. This was definitely the most terrifying mixed law in history. Nono and Huang Wenbing were almost scared silly by Linfeng. In this kind of situation, even the Lin family's ancestor Lin Hai wouldn't be able to stay calm, right? But I just tried it. If I use each law separately, I can only use 0.9% of the power of each law. It's the same as the amplitude laws that I've comprehended. Linfeng frowned and speculated. The 7 laws should be in a delicate balance. The power of the law that I've comprehended the least is at that level. It seems that I have to think of a way to improve my comprehension of the amplitude laws. Even so, Linfeng's combat power had greatly improved. Originally, he was only between the high-level Supreme Master and the Peak Supreme Master. But now, he could be said to have stepped into the Peak Supreme Master level. Even if he was still a little bit away from the Peak Supreme Master level, he was not far away. Of course, his cultivation was still at the beginner Supreme Master level. Although it had improved a little, there was still a long way to go to the intermediate Supreme Master level. P.S. Second update. This chapter is very tiring, super tiring. After writing it, I feel like I'm going to faint. I'd better go buy something to fill my head. I can't go on like this. Weapon Refining VIP Group 168605329 Weapon Refining Ordinary Group 204276549. Chapter 348. Boss, it seems like you still don't understand the true terror of mixed laws, Nono said in an old-fashioned tone. Linfeng asked doubtfully, did I say something wrong? Huang Wenbing was also puzzled. Could it be that mixed laws had other terrifying aspects? Nono said proudly, it's not that you're wrong, it's just that you didn't get to the main point. Then what's the main point? Huang Wenbing looked even more anxious than Linfeng. The current Linfeng was already terrifying enough. If the mixed laws were even more terrifying, then he couldn't imagine how terrifying Linfeng's strength would be. The most terrifying thing about mixed laws is that after the various laws are extracted, they can be fused in pairs, or even 3, 4, or even more, to form a variety of unique skills. Nono whetted the two's appetite and said unhurriedly, for example, Boss can fuse the law of amplitude with the law of strength to comprehend an extremely terrifying unique skill. He can also fuse the law of amplitude with the law of gravity to comprehend another unique skill. In short, the more laws are fused, the more terrifying the power will be. If we can actively fuse these extracted laws together, the ultimate skill we comprehend will definitely be terrifying to the extreme. At that time, even if we disregard Boss's battle experience, just this ultimate skill alone will be able to deal with any expert below the Earth Sage realm. Huang Wenbing suddenly sucked in a breath of cold air. Hiss, so terrifying. Although he also gained a little from listening to Jing Yuren's performance, compared to Linfeng's, that little bit of gain was completely negligible. Nono rolled her eyes. Otherwise, why would mixed laws be considered the most terrifying law? However, fusing these laws is also a bit difficult. Nono said again, the more laws there are, the harder it is to fuse them, because the balance of the laws must be maintained in order to display the greatest effect, so it takes countless practice to completely master these unique skills. The fusion of two supreme skills is still manageable, but for more than 3 types, each additional type will increase the difficulty by 10 times. If I want to completely fuse 7 types of laws, I'm afraid that the amount of time required will be frighteningly long. Hearing this, Linfeng's eyes lit up. He wasn't scared at all. If it were anything else, I might be worried. But if it's about time... A smile slowly crept onto his face. What he lacked the most was time, but at the same time, what he didn't lack the least was time. Nono said seriously, "Boss, believe me, as long as you can fuse 5, no, 4 types of laws, you will be invincible under the Earth Saint realm." Linfeng smiled. "Don't forget about our relationship. If you really are lying, I will definitely be able to sense it." "Oh, I almost forgot about that." Nono flapped her wings and patted her head. "Speaking of which, I still have to thank Jingyuren. If it weren't for her, I don't know how long I would have had to wait before I could extract the various nomological laws from the mixed nomological laws," Linfeng said as he looked up into the sky. She's gone." Nono also noticed. Huang Wenbing glanced around and said, "It seems that no one knows where she went." Linfeng said, "Maybe she didn't want anything in return, so she left without saying goodbye. She's a person worthy of respect." Huang Wenbing nodded, a trace of solemnity appearing on his face. Nono looked at Linfeng and opened her little mouth, wanting to say something but hesitated. But in the end, she closed her mouth and didn't say anything. "Forget it, let's go. There's nothing here for us to linger on." Linfeng waved his hand and said, "If we have the chance to meet her in the future, we'll think of a way to thank her." Then, Linfeng bid farewell to Nirvana Autark and the others and hurriedly left. Although Nirvana Autark and the others were reluctant to part, they also had some understanding at this time and needed time to slowly digest it. So in the end, they happily accepted Linfeng and Nono's farewell. The gentle breeze blew away time and brought life. The green on the ground became denser and denser, and the sun became more and more scorching. 3 months passed in a flash. On a lone island in the south of the Greenwood continent, which was part of the Han dynasty's border waters, a young man in green linen clothes sat cross-legged on the ground with his eyes closed, as if he didn't hear the chirping of insects and birds around him. A beautiful little bird was perched on his shoulder. Its eyes were half open, and it looked lazy and bored. After an unknown period of time, the young man suddenly opened his eyes, and a trace of light flashed through them. "Boss, did you succeed?" The beautiful little bird immediately became spirited. A young man walked over from the side and said respectfully, "How was it, boss? Did you get anything this time?" The young man in linen clothes smiled and slowly stood up. He opened his fist and closed his fingers, forming a fist into a palm. His palm slanted downwards, and with a soft shout, he slapped the seawater in front of him. With this slap, the seawater seemed to be pressed down by a huge mountain, and the seawater within a radius of tens of kilometers sank down by more than 3,000 feet. The terrifying force forcefully squeezed the seawater in all directions, forming a super-large whirlpool that looked like the bottom of a pot. Just one look at it was enough to make one's scalp tingle. Rumble! The deafening roar of the seawater rose up due to the huge pressure and buoyancy. When the seawater returned to normal, it didn't stop. Instead, it continued to rise due to the terrifying recoil. It rose for more than 1,000 feet before it stopped rising. When it reached the highest point, it fell back down due to the strong gravity. Rumble! This earth-shattering scene, accompanied by the resounding sound, was extremely spectacular. Nono's eyes bulged. So powerful! Huang Wenbing was also astonished, and his face was full of shock. This power! I'm afraid that even the limit of a supreme being can't compare to this? Just the fusion of these two techniques was already so terrifying. if 3 types of laws are fused. He finally understood how terrifying the fusion of laws was. In the past, he had only heard Nono talk about how terrifying the fusion of laws was. Although he was very shocked, it was far less shocking than the actual scene in front of him. The most direct feeling was the most shocking. The fusion of 2 techniques is indeed extraordinary. Linfeng exhaled a long breath of turbid air. Although I've only comprehended 0.90% of the fusion of the laws of strength and the laws of amplitude, its power is actually a little stronger than the attack of an ordinary limit supreme being. He wasn't arrogant enough to think that this move could dominate the peak supreme being experts. After his experience in the despair prison, he was very clear about the terror of a peak supreme being. Perhaps he was a little stronger than an ordinary peak supreme being, but compared to Supreme Mingi, Supreme Yenjun, and the others in the despair prison, he was still a lot weaker, not to mention the number 1 of the 8 giants, Supreme Mo Lu. I still need to work harder. Linfeng clenched his fists. He suspected that Supreme Yenjun, Supreme Mingi, and the others were experts who had comprehended the fusion of laws. Otherwise, how could these supreme beings be so strong that they could easily kill a group of experts of the same level? Other than the fusion of laws, Linfeng couldn't think of any other possibility. However, when Linfeng thought about how he had spent 3 whole months to comprehend the first unique skill, he couldn't help but sigh deeply. The fusion of laws is really time-consuming. If the fusion of 2 laws is already so difficult, then what about 3? When he thought of this question, he was secretly speechless, and his scalp went numb. Little did he know that Nono was already stunned. Originally, he thought that Linfeng could spend tens or even hundreds of years to comprehend the fusion of laws and comprehend the unique skill. He didn't expect Linfeng to succeed in comprehending the unique skill in just 3 months. At this speed, he even suspected that Linfeng had some hidden talent, which was why people thought he didn't have the talent for cultivation when he was tested. Nono said excitedly, "Boss, quickly give this unique skill a name." "A name?" Linfeng thought for a moment. "Let's call it Earth's Fury." Hearing this, Huang Wenbing asked curiously, "Earth's Fury, does it have any special meaning?" Linfeng shrugged, "No, I just think it sounds good." Huang Wenbing almost lost his balance and fell. He smiled bitterly. If other people comprehend a unique skill, they would think it over and over again, and then give it a domineering and mighty name. Boss, on the other hand, just casually named it, and it's such a powerful unique skill. Although it was called a unique skill, it should be called a skill of laws. This was the most formal name among the supreme beings, but usually no one would care about this small issue. In normal battles, I'll just use mixed laws, and at critical moments I'll use Earth's Fury. It should be able to achieve unexpected results. This skill of laws was Linfeng's trump card. Naturally, he wouldn't reveal it in front of others so easily. However, Earth's Fury alone isn't enough. I have to comprehend a few more unique skills. A single unique skill can easily be countered. Once it's blocked, I'll be at my wit's end. Linfeng wasn't a rookie anymore. He had some understanding of battle. Earth's Fury was comprehended from the fusion of the 7 strongest laws, the law of strength and the law of amplitude. The law of amplitude was supplementary, while the law of strength was the main. It belonged to the law of strength and was extremely strong. However, if he happened to encounter a tank-type supreme, then Linfeng would lose his advantage. Therefore, he still needed to comprehend another type of skill of laws. After thinking for a long time, Linfeng finally decided to try fusing the law of life or the law of soul with the law of amplitude. Whether it was the law of life or the law of soul, they were both relatively abstract laws. Once he comprehended a related skill of laws, there would be very few people who could stop him. It's decided then. I'll try fusing the law of life and the law of amplitude first. Lin Feng wouldn't let go of any opportunity to increase his strength. Chapter 349. Boss, what are you thinking about? Let's go. Nono urged from the side. This place is too small. We can fly back and forth a few times in a breath. It's really boring. Lin Feng nodded. Okay, let's leave this place first. As soon as he said that, a rumbling sound came from the place where Lin Feng had just slapped. Leave? None of you can leave today. A deafening voice sounded, full of anger. You disturbed my rest for no reason, and you still want to leave? The next moment, the 10,000 tons of seawater seemed to be lifted up by something huge. In the blink of an eye, the seawater fell back down like a waterfall hundreds of feet high. When the seawater fell back down, a huge creature appeared in front of Lin Feng and the rest. It was an incomparably huge tortoise. No, although its body shape was very similar to a tortoise, there were some differences. There were hundreds of thick, sharp spikes on its shell, and there were 2 tentacles on its head. The tentacles were very long, about 10 zhang long. The area of the tortoise shell was about 1,000 square meters, and the sharp spikes on the shell were at least 30 to 50 zhang long. The tail was like a huge collapsed stone pillar. Demonic beast. Huang Wenbing's expression changed. Not only was it a demonic beast, its aura had probably reached the level of a high-level supreme. Demonic beasts were originally more powerful than humans. A high-level supreme was no weaker than half of a human's supreme limit. Nono didn't care. A demonic beast is a demonic beast. What's there to be afraid of? Don't forget, Nono herself was a demonic beast. Facing the huge creature in front of him, Lin Feng smelled a hint of danger from it. He apologized in a neither servile nor overbearing manner. I didn't know you were here and unintentionally disturbed you. However, ignorance is blameless. Please forgive me. He was indeed unreasonable in this matter. Although he didn't do it on purpose, he was still in the wrong. Therefore, his apology was very sincere. However, the other party didn't appreciate his kindness at all. Instead, he became even more furious. His voice sounded like he was roaring, I don't care if you did it intentionally or not. Since you've offended me, there's only one word for it, death. It was a 10,000-year-old demon tortoise, but after cultivating for 10,000 years, it finally attained the cultivation level of a peak high-level supreme being, dominating the sea region within a radius of several 100,000 kilometers. Any demonic beast that dared to provoke it would either be swallowed whole by it or turned into nourishment for the sea region. It didn't expect that it would be provoked by an elementary supreme being while it was taking a nap here today. This was simply unforgivable. The more it thought about it, the angrier it got. It couldn't help but roar, roar. That voice was extremely loud and clear, spreading out like ripples. Even the surface of the sea below set off huge waves. You! Lin Feng had just uttered the first word. The 10,000-year-old turtle demon didn't intend to give Lin Feng another chance to speak. Its thick and long tail swung straight at him. Lin Feng's expression changed, and he hastily dodged. Even though he was fast, he only managed to dodge by a hair's breadth and was almost hit. This 10,000-year-old turtle demon's strength was much stronger than Lin Feng had expected. Although its aura was only at the level of a high-level supreme being, the strength and speed it displayed were definitely at the level of a supreme being. If he was unlucky enough to be hit by its tail, Lin Feng would probably be dead on the spot. So strong. It's almost at the level of Qiu Wanli in the Despair Prison. Lin Feng's expression became unprecedentedly solemn. At the same time, traces of killing intent arose in his heart toward this 10,000-year-old turtle demon that was bent on destroying them. The 10,000-year-old turtle demon paused for a moment and said in surprise, "You actually dodged it." It knew how strong it was. Not to mention a mere elementary supreme being human, even a high-level supreme being human wouldn't be able to dodge its attack. and once hit, even a high-level Supreme Being human would only have one path, death. But this elementary Supreme Being human in front of it just so happened to dodge its attack. Interesting. It opened its big mouth and actually revealed a smile. Linfeng took a deep breath and said angrily, "I don't want to be your enemy. I hope you don't force me." The 10,000-year-old turtle demon's sneak attack just now also aroused his anger. Ha 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 ha. The 10,000-year-old turtle demon suddenly laughed out loud. A mere elementary Supreme Being human, this noble one can kill you with a sneeze. What qualifications do you have to speak in front of this noble one? Huang Wenbing and Nono had already flown to the side, so as not to be a burden to Linfeng. "Boss should be fine, right?" Huang Wenbing asked nervously. "Don't worry. Although that guy is a high-level Supreme Being demonic beast, Boss isn't weak either." Nono didn't look worried at all. Instead, it looked very expectant. Boss can use it to test out the power of Earth's wrath, and see if it can hurt a high-level Supreme Being demonic beast. This is the first law technique that Boss has comprehended. So, there's no room for negotiation? Linfeng hovered in the air, facing the 10,000-year-old turtle demon from afar. Since that was the case, there was no need for him to be polite. He could also use the 10,000-year-old turtle demon to practice. After all, he still held back in his battle with carefree Supreme Being. Neither of them went for the kill, so the final result might not be the most accurate. The 10,000-year-old turtle demon roared, "Let's fight! Why are you talking so much nonsense?" As soon as it finished speaking, it flew toward Linfeng. Although it was a demonic beast of the ocean, its speed wasn't slow at all. This was something that Linfeng had already verified. Whoosh! The 10,000-year-old turtle demon left behind a series of afterimages and reached Linfeng's side in a breath's time. It opened its mouth and bit toward Linfeng. "Don't even think about it." Linfeng's essence force suddenly erupted. At the same time, he used a part of the time law. Although he had only comprehended a mere 15% of the time law, the effect was very terrifying. Coupled with the eruption of his essence force, it was as if he had teleported. In the blink of an eye, he was already dozens of feet away. This time, he was already prepared. Naturally, it was harder for the 10,000-year-old turtle demon to hit him. "Your speed is not bad." The 10,000-year-old turtle demon turned around and chased after Linfeng. This time, Linfeng didn't dodge. Instead, his body flashed slightly and dodged the 10,000-year-old turtle demon's bite. Then, he smashed a fist toward the 10,000-year-old turtle demon's head. Water arrow. The 10,000-year-old turtle demon wasn't slow either. When Linfeng's fist came crashing down, it used the time law to summon a huge water arrow, which collided with Linfeng's fist. Boom! A huge explosion occurred and Linfeng was sent flying. The 10,000-year-old turtle demon was also pushed back dozens of feet before stabilizing its body. Rumble! The seawater below was affected by the aftermath of the explosion. It rose high and made a deafening sound. The fish, prawns, and low-level monsters in the water were either dead or injured. The water was dyed a faint red. It was the color of blood. "It seems that I have underestimated you." The 10,000-year-old turtle demon's eyes, which were dozens of times larger than lanterns, swept sharply across Linfeng, who was in a rather sorry state. It was serious. Overturning water and sea. Without any warning, it used the most powerful move of the water law that it had comprehended. Suddenly, the surroundings seemed to have turned into a world of the sea. Endless terrifying pressure came endlessly. The seawater tumbled and the earth cracked. Linfeng's speed suddenly exploded and increased to the limit. Before the terrifying pressure could reach him, he escaped and appeared 300 feet away. This place happened to be on the back of the 10,000-year-old turtle demon. Without any hesitation, he raised his fist and smashed it on the thick turtle shell of the 10,000-year-old turtle demon. However, the 10,000-year-old turtle demon's face showed a mocking smile. Its turtle shell could be said to be the strongest part of its body. Not to mention a human supreme being, even an ordinary human supreme being could only leave a mark on its turtle shell at most, and would not be able to cause any harm to it. Although Linfeng's speed far exceeded its estimation, and was even a bit faster than it still did not think that the opponent could break its turtle shell's defense. Boom! Sure enough, when Linfeng's fist hit its turtle shell, it did not cause the slightest damage. It did not even make it tremble. Not good! Linfeng's mental power had already sensed the 10,000-year-old turtle demon's tail sweeping towards him. Want to escape? Too late. The 10,000-year-old turtle demon laughed. However, the 10,000-year-old turtle demon did not expect that Linfeng would actually dodge its attack at the last moment. Its eyebrows that did not have eyebrows frowned. Troublesome human brat! At this time, it was already angry. With its identity as a high-level supreme being, it actually could not take down a human supreme being after so long. This was simply a great humiliation to it. Overturning water and sea. Almost at the moment when Linfeng escaped, the 10,000-year-old turtle demon once again used its strongest move. The surroundings instantly turned into a world of the sea, and the terrifying pressure came instantly. At the same time, the originally ordinary spikes on its turtle shell suddenly changed. It roared, "Ah!" At the tip of the rows of sharp spikes, a dazzling white light burst out. The hundreds of spikes all burst out with intense white light. Hundreds of distorted white lights flickered, then connected together to form a light surface. The light surface's center bulged, as if it had absorbed all the white light's energy, forming an incomparably dazzling and frightening white light. Without any delay, the white light shot towards Linfeng as soon as it formed. Its speed was even several times faster than the 10,000-year-old turtle demon's tail sweeping over. "Ah! Be careful!" Huang Wenbing exclaimed, his eyes wide open. Nono's little eyes flashed with a touch of worry. It seemed to have made a difficult decision. Its feathers stood up, just like a fried chicken, but countless times prettier. Nothing must happen to Boss. This was the only thought in its mind. The 10,000-year-old turtle demon looked at the white light and sneered. "You should feel honored that you forced me to use my talent skill, freezing lightning." Above the turtle shell, Linfeng's face was cold. The moment he flew out, he sensed extreme danger. His hair stood on end, and he didn't stop at all. His speed was once again increased to the maximum. Swoosh! He had experienced such a battle countless times in Space No. 1. Even the attack speed of the high-level simulation couldn't reach him, let alone this 10,000-year-old turtle demon in front of him. Sure enough, although Linfeng dodged a little awkwardly, he still dodged in the end. "If you think that's all, then you've underestimated my talent skill," the 10,000-year-old turtle demon sneered. The fusion of freezing lightning and overturning water and sea is the luxurious feast I've prepared for you. Take your time and enjoy it. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.